Chapter 271. With love for, charge, that word made Choi Han's serious expression become even more serious. He activated his aura even stronger this time. This the action leader could not speak properly. That thing that looked like a snake, no, a dangerous devil, was definitely aura. Why is a sword master appearing in a back alley like this? The action leader's eyes started to move quickly. The enemy numbered approximately 20 people. It was a very small number. There were around 100 people in this base right now, so based on numbers, their side had 5 times as many as the enemy. However, the enemy had a sword master with them. Branch manager Nim, don't they seem to be the real arm? The action leader did not respond to the chief's question, however, he had reached the same conclusion in his mind. Arm was the Eastern Continent's greatest ruler of the underworld. Even the Mostu minions knew about Arm. That was why it was possible to think Arm would have a real sword master within their ranks. Of course, he had also thought that they might not be the real Arm. Then why would a sword master put on such a shabby outfit and pretend to be Arm? A sword master was guaranteed to have a high rank no matter where they went. Why would someone like that use such a weird tone while speaking and wear such shabby clothes to come here? It was the moment that the action leader's mind was becoming a complicated mess. Cal heard a voice in his head. Human, it was Rayon's voice. Human, I will do good deeds too. I will save the Eastern Continent. He's such a selfless dragon. Rayon was a completely different dragon than the one that Cal had read about in The Birth of a Hero, that ended up going berserk. Well, I guess that is Rayon Meru. It was like how he was not the real Cal Henitus, but was now Cal Henitus. It was the same type of thing. Cal nonchalantly responded to Rayon, "Go find the money." At that moment, the bandits who were with Cal flinched and looked toward him. The former bandit leader showed the greatest reaction. "Ah, I'm not talking to all of you. All of you just charge forward." Cal casually ignored the bandits' responses. The bandits and the bandit leader wondered who Cal was talking to if it was not to them, however, they did not ask. Cal ignored the bandits and continued to speak. "Find the jewels as well. Find money and jewels." Rayon responded to Cal's comments. "Human? Are we taking the bad money from the bad guys? I thought you were weird these days, but you really are a good person," Cal casually added on. "I'll give you 3 gold coins." Silence filled Cal's mind for a moment. However, an excited voice soon returned. "I'll do it. Human, I'll work very hard. Take on and Hong with you as well. All 3 of you will get 3 gold coins each. Human, just wait. I am great and mighty, so I will be able to find it quickly. I will find everything." The dragon that was the greatest detection device in the world started to move. The enemy started to move as well. The action leader shouted one more time, however, his expression was now calm and determined. "Are you really Arm? Why are you ambushing our branch like this?" Cal was about to respond. Unfortunately, Choi Han, who had received the command to charge forward, was a bit faster. He took 1 step and confidently answered back. "We are the real Arm? Agu." Cal subconsciously put a hand to his forehead, while the only person who was not shocked by this quickly moved. Mount Lieb's former bandit leader stepped in front of Choi Han and shouted. His action looked effortless, however. His eyes were looking back and forth at the masked Choi Han and Cal before quickly figuring out what to do. "Ahahaha, you stupid bastards. Can't you tell by looking at us?" The former bandit leader pointed at the white star and red stars on his chest and shouted. "We are the real Arm. We came to destroy you. Kahahaha." Boom, boom, boom. The former bandit leader, who was almost as large as Tunker, ran toward the gate. He was so energetic that the entire ground was rumbling. The action leader, who was shocked by the former bandit leader, shouted to his crew. "Close the gate." Screech boom. The members who were near the gate quickly closed the gate. They were able to act so quickly because they had been anxious about how Arm had been growing their influence these past few months and had been prepared. "Perfect. They will not be able to crash through the gate." The action leader immediately pointed to 3 members. You, and you. Immediately go to the boss, the first branch manager, and the Mercenaries Guild. Tell them about what is happening." A sword master had appeared. It would not be enough to just get a battle squad over. It was at that moment. Boom, boom, boom. He could still hear someone running from outside the iron gate. He's not stopping. It was the moment the action leader's pupils shook. Bang! A loud noise filled the area. At the same time, a part of the iron gate warped. Anybody could tell that it was the mark of an axe. A piece of the steel broke off from the impact of a large axe. They could hear loud laughter coming from outside the gate. Ka-ha-ha-ha-ha. The real arm only charges forward. We will destroy anything in our way. We will only charge forward, forward, I tell you. Ka-ha-ha-ha-ha. The action leader subconsciously commented back, "You damn crazy arm bastards." At the same time, someone else let out a quiet gasp of admiration. Oh, it was Cal. He really is a witty one. Cal was very satisfied with the former bandit leader's actions. This was how you made a mess. Choi Han also realized something while watching the former bandit leader. The former bandit leader, who was about to swing at the iron gate with his axe one more time, peeked over while trying to see Cal's reaction when he made eye contact with Choi Han. Choi Han commented the moment they made eye contact. Now I'm getting a feel for it. A feel for what? It was before the former bandit leader could ask that question. Move. Gasp. The former bandit leader gasped as he quickly moved. He gasped once again after seeing what happened, however. Nobody else could hear it due to the noise. Bang! The black aura's explosive noise tuned out everything else in the area. This violent aura that was different than the calm aura from before destroyed the iron gate. PSSSSSSSSSS wind, and the remaining pieces of the iron gate fluttered in the air. The iron gate that once existed was no longer part of this world. The former bandit leader urgently got up and looked around at the area that was completely silent and quickly started to speak. Ahahaha. Can you see how strong we are? The action leader could not hear the former bandit leader's words at all. He had heard about sword masters, but had never seen one in person. He had seen a highest-grade expert, however. They were nothing compared to sword masters. The action leader looked, not at the laughing former bandit leader, but at the masked sword master, the man who wore an outfit with a single red star on it, and started to speak. He had a serious expression on his face. "We have the Liban mercenaries backing us. Aren't you worried?" Liban City was one of the few free cities on the eastern continent. The Mercenaries Guild located there was a meaningful one to all of the mercenaries on the eastern continent. Arm was naturally stronger than each individual mercenary. Although the Mercenary King was located in the western part of the eastern continent, mercenaries were usually weak compared to the other forces of the continent. This was because it was mainly made up of people who did not properly learn any martial arts or sword arts. However, mercenaries existed for battle. They were even used in wars between kingdoms. There were no wars without mercenaries. Mercenaries were one of the roots of any war. That was why even Arm could not openly aim for the Mostu faction that was close to the Mercenaries Guild. But the action leader was now facing these bastards who called themselves the real Arm and ignored the mercenaries. The sword master, who made eye contact with him, was walking toward them in a straight line and answered the question. History can always be rewritten. There is no fear in the path of a legend. Cal looked toward Choi Han and was a bit amused. I guess his acting isn't completely terrible now. He's improved a bit. However, the former bandit leader, who was extremely sharp, understood the meaning behind Choi Han's words. He's serious. He's completely serious. Who did I end up getting involved with? The former bandit leader became a bit sad. However, he followed along as best as he could. Yes, we, the real Arm, will create a legend. Kekekekek. Cal changed his evaluation of the former bandit leader. This punk was someone who was necessary for the real Arm. Cal was satisfied that he found someone useful that could be placed in many different roles. Human. I completed the mission. I found it. There's a safe in a secret room. Oh, I also took off the safe door. I, Rayon Meru, am great and mighty. We're rich. Cal listened to the location Rayon was telling him as he slowly started to walk. He was naturally walking straight forward as well. The action leader watched the enemy coming closer and slowly stepped backward as he shouted at his crew. Everybody come inside the building. We will persist until the reinforcements arrive. He had chosen to hide in the building after seeing the sword master's strength. He had determined that, no matter how strong the sword master was, he should not be able to destroy the building that was stronger than the iron gate. Of course, they could easily destroy the building, however, Cal didn't want to do that. Are we playing hide and seek? The former bandit leader started to sweat after hearing Cal's comment. Cal was leisurely walking down the corridor of this building that was located in the corner of Liban City. Ugh. He worried a bit after seeing a Mostu branch member gasping before falling down. However, he could not stare at this person for a long time. Another member jumped out of one of the rooms to Cal's side. He had been aiming for an ambush, however. He was instantly faced with Choi Han. Choi Han quickly hit the member in the back of the neck and made him faint. He then grabbed the fainted member by the collar and threw him back into the room before closing the door as if it had never opened in the first place. Bang! He's not joking. Choi Han quickly took care of anybody who popped up and got in their way of charging forward. At the same time, he was abiding by Cal's order not to kill anybody and only making them faint or breaking an arm or two. That was why Cal was concerned. This is too easy. It shouldn't be this easy. Cal was currently on the highest floor of the building. However, he did not hear much fighting happening down below. It could not be helped. Cal had left everyone else outside the building. Only Choi Han was with Cal as they walked through the building. Once he saw the action leader escape toward the building, Cal told the bandits to pretend to break in for about 5 minutes before returning to the inn. Why? We need to move quickly. They needed to loot the place and run before the reinforcements arrived. That was why they needed to quickly take care of the enemies. It might be reasonable to ask if it would have been faster if Cal brought the bandits in with him. However, Cal already had some reliable children with him. Inside the quiet building, meow, meow. 2 kittens popped out of the white fog. On and Hong. The 2 kittens who had gone with Rayon had used their fog and poison in order to spread a paralysis and sleeping poison throughout the building, once the action leader escaped into the building. The action leader's decision to escape into the building without knowing about this was the worst decision ever. Screech. Screech. Cal was walking through the wooden corridor. There was only one door left in front of him. Cal had made on and Hong spread the sleeping poison slowly on purpose. He wanted to give the strong individuals and the ones in power enough time to escape to the top of the building. Those people needed to all faint from Choi Han's hands. Screech. Cal stopped walking. On and Hong slowly stepped back and hid inside the darkness. Choi Han lifted his foot into the air once Cal turned toward him. Bang! The door broke down with the kick. Cal walked forward again once the obstacle was removed, allowing him to see a person inside. No. The branch manager was shaking in fear. His eyes were focused on Cal and Choi Han, who were wearing the same black outfits. Choi Han had his black aura around him as he stared at the action leader with his black pupils. White fog was slowly entering the room from behind the 2 of them. The action leader, who had been the first to escape to the top floor, had watched his subordinates fall to the ground on his way up. You! The branch manager could see the white fog slowly turning red. This red color was giving him an ominous feeling. You devil-like bastards. It didn't matter if they were from Arm or not anymore. Will I be able to survive? A sword master and poison. He could not help but be full of fear. The branch manager could see the man with reddish-brown eyes who was protected by the sword master crouching down in front of him. The devil. He seemed to be upset after being called the devil. He then continued to speak as if it was an unfair assessment. We are people who love peace and justice. The branch manager feared this man who was speaking bullshit. Why? It was because the red fog got closer and closer to him as the man started to smile more. However, he could not move. The sword master's black aura was at the tip of his neck. Ooh, the fog reached up to his neck. The branch manager was filled with fear when the man with the reddish-brown eyes suddenly started to walk. The branch manager's eyes opened wide. Bang, a small explosion soon occurred. How did he know about that? He was so shocked that he even forgot about the poison in front of him. Cal, the man with the reddish-brown eyes, stood by a wall in a corner of the branch manager's room when a mana orb suddenly appeared and destroyed a portion of the wall. A small room appeared from behind it, a secret room. It was a place that only the boss and the top 5 ranking branch managers knew about. It was a place with all sorts of documents and dirty money. The enemy had accurately aimed for that spot. The branch manager made eye contact with Cal, a mana orb. Is he a mage? The branch manager recalled the mana orb and questioned the man's identity. However, that was not the issue. He peeked at the red fog before urgently starting to shout. How did you know about that? Unless someone tells you about it, the action leader suddenly stopped talking. When he recalled what he had just said, unless someone tells you about it. Yes, this was someplace you could not know about unless someone told you about it. Only the boss and the top 5 ranking members knew about this place. The top 7 ranking members originally knew about it. However, 2 of them had died in battle against Arm when their territories had been lost. Perhaps, is there a spy within our ranks? A spy within the top 5 ranking members, or perhaps even the boss? The branch manager, who was the 5th ranking member and also an action leader, looked toward Cal, whose eyes started to curl up from smiling. Cal looked toward the branch manager and told him the truth. You're right. Someone told me. He's right, I told him. I am the great and mighty Rayon Meru. I did not do it faster than usual because of the 3 gold coins. I did it faster because I am even greater now. Cal could hear Rayon's voice, but the branch manager could not. The branch manager started to become suspicious of the other ranking members in their organization. Cal was aiming for this. That was why he had not killed anybody. The Mostu faction would slowly get destroyed soon enough. Furthermore, it would start a war between the mercenaries and Arm. Cal whispered to the branch manager who would play an important role for them in the future. Sleep tight. Ugh. The red fog covered the branch manager's face. His body became paralyzed. There also seemed to be sleeping poison as he slowly lost consciousness. The last thing he saw before losing consciousness was Cal entering the secret room. He lost consciousness while being angry about the spy and these real Arm bastards. That was why he could not see what happened next. Click. Cal took off the door to the safe in the secret room. It fell off easily thanks to Rayon already breaking it in advance. Cal had to work hard in order to prevent the corners of his lips twitching in joy. Human, it's gold, jewels. There's a lot of gold coins too. The bad guys had a lot of money. There was quite a bit of money. There were especially a lot of gold bars, but human. Didn't you say this was the weakest branch? Does that mean we will take a lot more money from the bad guys? Cal's mind was filled with Rayon's voice, as well as someone else's voice. The owner of the Fire of Destruction commented in a low voice, throwing away money. An honorable way of throwing away money. The corners of Cal's lips slowly went up. A happy way of throwing away money. Cal could no longer hold it in after hearing the Fire of Destruction's voice. Ha 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 ha, he was happy. Cal laughed out loud for the first time in a long time. He was excited. It was always fun getting free money. Human, you seem happy, a happy way of throwing away money. Hehehe. Rayon and the Fire of Destruction's voices became beautiful background music for Cal. Cal happily listened before speaking to Choi Han and the children averaging 9 years old. Retreat. They destroyed the door and filled the building with poison. One of the Mostu branches had been looted in less than 25 minutes. However, the reinforcement and mercenaries guild members who arrived too late would see that nobody was severely injured or killed. However, they could see the branch manager's bloodshot eyes. We need to catch those devil-like bastards. The branch manager also met with Boss Mostu and informed him of the spy. Something big was about to go down in Liban City's underworld. Forgetting about all of that, Cal was wearing a simple yet clean white shirt and beige pants while smiling brightly the next day. Egu, aren't you that young man from last time? The grandmother who owned the bakery near the inn remembered seeing Cal a few days ago. Although he had taken over an inn with a sketchy past, she remembered having a good impression of this young man who said that he would try his best. Are you finally opening the inn? Cal, who looked like he had grown up a bit wealthy but was wearing simple clothing, respectfully grabbed the grandmother's hand. "Yes, grandmother, we will open this afternoon." The bakery grandmother could see the behind Cal that was decorated for its grand opening. Cal was standing in front of the inn. Today was the day that they opened their first inn in the eastern continent, as well as the real Arm's first base. The human is smiling like St. Jack. Now we will make money through this inn. Cal pretended to be an earnest inn owner as he listened to Rayon's voice. 1. Really don't like how the author switches back and forth between action leader and branch manager, but what can you do? Chapter 272. A Beautiful Night 1. This is how adventurers respond if you ask them about Liban City. The city where adventure starts, the city that loves adventures. Liban City was a place that stimulated your desire for adventure. It was fine once you got used to it, but for those visiting for the first time, it was easy to get shocked by this city that had businesses, mercenaries, and other adventure-related areas being so developed. This was the case for this beginner adventurer named Bob as well. Wow. Now that he was 20 years old, he took his first step as an adventurer. Liban City truly is amazing. Small cities usually only had 1 or 2 inns, however. Liban City had numerous inns in the plaza alone. The beginner adventurer looked at the clock tower in the central plaza. 2 p.m. He needed to find an inn to spend the night. Bob, who had been looking forward to his first night in Liban City, looked around before heading toward a place. "Oh, I like the name of that inn." He mumbled the name written on the sign as he headed toward it. Hope and Adventure Loving Inn. It also said, Grand Opening, next to the sign. He liked the inn name and the fact that it was having a grand opening. For a beginner adventurer like him who was just starting off in Liban City, he thought that it was a very fitting inn to start his journey. However, Bob had to stop in front of the inn. He could see that the building looked clean and nice. He thought about his shabby outfit, his old second-hand bag, as well as the small amount of coins he had in his pocket. It was at that moment. "Welcome." The employee at the entrance greeted him. The beginner adventurer, who had been hesitant, felt relieved after seeing the honest expression on the employee's face. He quietly asked the employee a question. "This is your grand opening." Bob looked toward the honest-looking employee, who seemed to be from a mountain village like himself, as he waited for a response. The employee, who was indeed from a mountain village, well, mountain bandit group to be correct, realized that he found a prey and started to speak. "You'll be receiving a glove if you don't memorize it correctly." The former mountain bandit recalled Beecrox's glove as he warmly responded back. "Yes, today is our opening day. We are providing a cup of beer and a plate of smoked chicken for free to all visitors." "Oh, how wonderful." "That's enough for a meal?" Bob was someone who played along well. "You are correct. It is our grand opening event for the next week. In addition, we are doing a 50% discount for all guests who stay with us this first month." "Oh." "Finally, unlike other inns, we are providing towels and other toiletries free of charge." "Oh, how amazing." Someone interjected as the mountain bandit and Bob's conversation continued. "Isn't it? This is a great inn." Bob looked toward the handsome man with short hair who suddenly appeared. Cal gently responded to Bob's gaze that seemed to be asking who he was. "I am an employee of the inn." "Ah, I see. I didn't know because you were not wearing a uniform." "That is not a problem. I couldn't help but interject because I saw a cool adventurer Nim." A cool adventurer. That description made Bob start to smile widely. "Ha ha ha ha, do I seem like that? I am still just a beginner." "My goodness. I thought you were a young and talented adventurer, Nim, but if you are just a beginner, I can't help but imagine how famous you will be in the future." Bob's shoulders slowly started to go up. On the other hand, the mountain bandit could not help but get chills while watching this new side of Cal. This person can act like such a friendly employee. Cal reached his hand out to Bob. Bob grabbed on as it seemed like the obvious thing to do. Cal naturally led Bob inside the inn entrance as he continued to speak. "I am happy to host a future great adventurer Nim in our inn. I think you will be very famous in the future. Can you please tell me your name?" "Ha ha ha ha. Thank you for the exaggerated compliment. Well, my name is Bob." "I will definitely be famous in the future." Bob. That name made Cal think about Tunka, however. He casually handed the adventurer's hand to the employee inside and responded back. Mr. Bob, I hope this is the start of an amazing adventure for you. Thank you very much. Bob walked into the inn filled with joy. He felt as if he had already become an amazing adventurer. Cal watched Bob, Choi Han, who was helping with the serving on the first floor, and Beecrox, who was dressed as a chef and heading for the kitchen, as he turned around. The mountain bandit gulped after seeing Cal's face, instantly turned stoic once he turned around. Pat, Pat, Cal patted the employee on the shoulder. The employee stiffened up at Cal's slow patting, however. Cal was actually praising him. You're doing well, keep it up. Pat, Pat. The mountain bandit vigorously nodded his head. Cal was satisfied with this response. He heard Rayon's voice in his head. We are earning money. More money. They said you start with a speck of dust but end up with a dragon's lair. I'm going to earn enough to fill a dragon's lair. Vicious. Cal ignored Rayon's comments. However, he soon heard an ancient power's voice. Hehe, throwing money around. So happy, so precious. Can't wait to see all that money being thrown around. The fire of destruction seemed to be slowly getting crazier. Cal feared this cheapskate fiery thunderbolt for a different reason than why he feared Rayon. The problem was that he felt the same way. Money was precious. Cal looked toward the person approaching him and started to speak. Let's go? Yes, young Master Nim. His servant Ron followed him with a relaxed smile on his face. There was somewhere Cal needed to go with Ron on this grand opening day. Time to go to City Hall? Yes, sir. I will guide you there. The City Hall was located at the center of Liban City. They needed to go inform the city of their business opening. The mountain bandit employee next to Cal looked at Cal in confusion, and Cal responded back with a smile. We are law-abiding citizens. We love the law. The mountain bandit avoided Cal's smile. Scary people. None of the mercenaries had come to the inn's grand opening. The people who would go crazy for free beer were nowhere to be found. Why? It was because Arm had touched the mercenaries' pride. Of course, it was not the real Arm, but the real Arm. But how would they know? The Liban City's Mercenaries Guild was probably in a state of emergency right now. But our boss, who caused all of that mess, is smiling gently. The assassin old man, who was their boss's right-hand man, seemed even more relaxed. Relax and work hard until we come back. The mountain bandit held back his tears as he responded to Cal's comment. I will work like my life depends on it. Please trust me. Cal wondered why this guy was acting like this as he headed to City Hall with Ron. Cal could see a statue as soon as he arrived in front of City Hall. It was the statue of the current mayor. He has about 2 to 3 months left in his term. He nodded his head at Ron's comment and observed the face of the mayor depicted on the statue. The Mercenaries Guild and the Merchant Alliance that controlled the daytime aspects of Liban City took turns placing a new mayor. Each mayor's term was 4 years long, and an election was coming up soon. Of course, the mercenaries and merchants had made it so that there was only one candidate up until now. The current mayor was from the Mercenaries Guild. Arm was being even more careful because the mayor is from the Mercenaries Guild. But it failed thanks to us. Ron nodded his head at his puppy young Master Nim, who answered while smiling. Young Master Nim. Yes. You plan on revealing Mostu's cozy relationship with the Mercenaries Guild during this election, right? What a smart old man. Cal did not respond. Then you should be able to take care of Arm, Mostu, the Mercenaries Guild, and all of the forces dealing with the underworld of Liban City all at once. Am I right, young Master Nim? Cal didn't respond again, however. Ron knew enough about Cal to know what this silence meant. However, Ron didn't know everything about Cal just yet. Cal handed the business opening documents to Ron. Here. Shall I go report it for you? They had filled out the documents from the city hall in advance and had to just go turn it in today. Ron had naturally taken care of everything and handed it to Cal, who filled in the empty spots. Yes, Ron, you need to do it. I do? Yeah, and there's a part you need to fill out as well. Ron watched Cal avoiding his gaze and opened the envelope and took the document out. The inn's name was correct. The address was correct, and even the inn size and number of employees was correct. However, one thing had changed. Young Master Nim. Ron called out to Cal, but Cal did not respond this time either. However, Ron could not look at the silent Cal. His gaze was stuck at the box for the inn owner's name. That box was filled out as well. Ron's name was listed on there. The other box that was empty was the box to sign that said everything listed was correct. That was what Ron needed to fill out. Ron recalled what Cal had told him before. It was what Cal had said on the day they arrived at the eastern continent, as Cal pointed to Ron while talking to Mount Lieb's former bandit leader. You will be one of the underworld's rulers starting from today onward, and this is the person who will be your boss. That was pretty much an order telling Ron to be the ruler of the underworld, and Ron happily accepted as he had not forgotten about his revenge. Cal was providing the foundation for it to Ron, who had accepted that order. It's yours. Ron responded with a smile that was far from his usual benign smile. He had returned to the eastern continent after losing everything. Now he had a place to restart in that place. Ron Mallan. That was a name that even Arm would have forgotten about by now. It's not like Arm has nothing better to do than to confirm a small inn owner's name in order to find me. His puppy, young Master Nim, probably handed him this document, while knowing that that was the case. Ron folded the document back up and held it in his hand. He then looked toward Cal, who was looking at him, and started to speak. Many of the Liban City residents have issues with the Merchant Alliance and Mercenaries Guild taking turns being the mayor. Both the residents and the small business owners had issues with this practice. The Merchant Alliance mainly accepted mid-sized merchant guilds that could do regional trades, but did not accept small businesses into the fold. I will look for a worthy mayor candidate. Beating around the bush did not fit Cal or Ron's style. Cal preferred it like this as well. You take care of it. Ron had a bright, benign smile on his face. What the? Cal was a bit scared. That extremely bright smile seemed vicious. Ron didn't care as he started to speak to his young Master Nim, who was still scared of him. I will do it properly as your servant, young Master Nim. Sure, you can take your time. Cal turned away from Ron's even thicker smile. Ron gently asked this cute puppy young master of his. Will we make our move tonight? Ron could see Cal starting to smile. Cal's palms were getting itchy thinking about tonight. Why? They were planning on emptying all of the Mostu faction safes tonight. Cal could see the 6-year-old dragon that was full of greed once night arrived. Human, take it? Cal received what Rayon was offering him. He then asked Rayon in shock. Why do we need a potato sack? Money. Rayon's firm response made Cal flinch. However, the young dragon was excited. He seemed very much like the dragons that like shiny things. Human, the spatial pocket bag needs to be big in order to pack away all of the dirty money. I told B-Crocs, who was acting indifferent, to give me this sack so I could put spatial dimension magic on it. Cal looked down at the simple potato sack. He was certain that B-Crocs got annoyed by the children averaging 9 years old and handed it to them. Cal could see the excited children averaging 9 years old in the corner room on the 3rd floor of the inn. Looks like we can get some allowance again today. He said that he will add it all up and give it to us later, but then we won't know how many gold coins it is. I'm going to fill my entire piggy bank. Rayon approached Cal, who was nonchalantly holding onto the potato sack, and put it tightly in Cal's arms as he continued to speak. It is an extremely large spatial dimension. Human, just trust me. Cal clenched onto the sack and calmly responded back. I trust you. He really meant it. The children averaging 9 years old were great and mighty. He. Rayon seemed excited as he spun in circles. He could hear the voice of the fire of destruction as well. Precious potato sack, precious bad guys away. Money, precious, rare, and most beautiful of all, is throwing money away. The fire of destruction was completely crazy. This was Cal's honest belief. It was at that moment. Cal Nim. Choi Han. Cal received an item from Choi Han as well. It was the robe with a red star on it, as well as a black mask. Choi Han had taken the initiative to pack the shabby, real arm uniform. Choi Han, you actually enjoy this, don't you? That's what Cal wanted to ask, however. Choi Han looked serious. He looked like someone who was ready to move for peace and justice. Cal thought to himself once more that Choi Han really was a good person as he put the robe around himself. Choi Han opened the third-floor window and started to speak. "Cal Nim, I will escort you there. We will only charge forward." Cal was flabbergasted. All of them were too excited to stealthily escape through the inn window. However, Cal confidently responded back. "Of course, charging forward looks cool." Cal gave the order. "We will head to the Mercenaries Guild first." Arm and the Mercenaries Guild in Liban City would be bitter enemies after tonight. Those evil bastards who had their feet in the underworld would fight each other. Cal could not help but laugh. "You are smiling like a villain." He ignored Ainz's comment. This unexpected windfall of money was already floating in front of his eyes. 1. PR, knowing Bcrox, his life might really depend on it. Chapter 273. A beautiful night, too. Cal stood on top of a roof and looked down. He could hear Choi Han's voice. As expected, the Mercenaries Guild building is bright even during the night. The location of today's safe looting was vibrant. Liban City's Mercenaries Guild building was located a bit away from the Eastern Pleasure District. The current situation made its location very fitting. The building was still full of light even though it was night time, and didn't look as if they were going to sleep anytime soon. The reason was obvious. It's a pretty intolerable situation. The Mercenaries Guild people have to work. The Liban City's Mercenaries Guild was able to influence the underworld by partnering with Mostu. The Merchant Alliance and the Mercenaries Guild shared control of Liban City. The Mercenaries Guild was much stronger than the Merchant Alliance, however. They lacked funds. The way to resolve this issue was to protect Mostu's organization and receive her some dirty money from the underworld through them. But Arm appeared and started to eat away at the underworld. The Mercenaries Guild was angry at this, however. It was difficult to do anything to Arm, who moved very slowly and cautiously. Arm was the Eastern Continent's underworld's strongest player. That was why the Mercenaries Guild had to be wary of Arm as well. However, Arm moved completely openly this time. In that case, the Mercenaries Guild now had the justification to act in order to protect their pride and their money. That was why they would have started to move, however. It had only been 1 day since the incident. There is a good chance that the Mercenaries Guild has not decided how they should react to Arm just yet. A large monster like the Mercenaries Guild was going to get involved in the small Liban city's underworld matter, so they probably had to think hard about how grand of a reaction they would have. Thanks to that, it was likely that Arm would not have noticed the atmosphere around the mercenaries right now. Furthermore, Mostu's faction is guaranteed to be busy looking for that internal spy. "What do you need me to do?" Cal did not look back at Choi Han, who was looking at him, and put the map in his hand back in his pocket. This was a new map based on the map the former bandit leader gave to him, but filled with information that Ron had gathered. He pointed down with his now empty hands. He was pointing at the entrance of the Mercenaries Guild building, which still had a lot of people going in and out. Cal turned toward Choi Han and gave the order. "Turn it into a mess." Choi Han took out his sword and slightly bowed. "I will do as you commanded." Choi Han's pupils were cloudy as he raised his head back up. He should have understood what Cal meant. Cal opened his arms after seeing Choi Han's reaction. "Meow, meow." He continued to speak once On and Hong were both in his arms. "Rayon." "I understand, human." Cal On and Hong all slowly turned invisible. Choi Han jumped off of the building as soon as they were completely invisible. The early spring wind brushed past his cheeks. "Huh? What is that?" The guards outside the guild building entrance noticed the suddenly falling individual wearing black clothes and clenched their weapons. Even the people who were going in and out of the building with serious expressions on their faces flinched and looked at the unknown assailant who had suddenly appeared. Choi Han, that unknown assailant, looked around before raising his sword up. Aura? Aye, it's those bastards." Someone who knew about the Arm and Mostu incident shouted that they were the same people. It was at that moment The black aura that violently shot up contrary to the calm night covered the area underneath the magic lights with a black shadow. Bang! The black aura struck down on the wall surrounding the guild building. A curved boomerang-like attack cut the wall into two. Gasp. Son of a... Go tell the guild leader Nim. He really was a sword master. I didn't know the Mostu bastards were telling the truth. The shouts of different mercenaries in the area could be heard. Clack, clack, clack. The closed windows of the mercenaries' guild building started to open. The people who were trying to determine the source of the loud noises by sticking their heads out the windows could see the unknown assailant wearing black outside the guild entrance. You know where this is. Attacking the mercenaries' guild is an act that will turn every mercenary on the continent into your enemies. One of the mercenaries walked through the darkness and shouted out loud. He was looking at Choi Han, the unknown assailant covered in black. Choi Han heard a young dragon's voice in his head at that moment. Choi Han will be back. See you soon. It was now time for the invisible Cal and children to sneak into the mercenaries' guild building. He heard the mercenary's voice again. Hurry up and drop your sword. Do you want to see the scariness of the mercenaries? Choi Han clenched the handle of his sword. He then answered back to the mercenaries who were looking at him. I'm not sure if you really are that scary. He really meant it. The only thing Choi Han feared in this world was his surroundings being destroyed. The black aura rumbled as Choi Han lightly stomped his foot. His body was heading toward the mercenaries' guild. No killing. Buy us time. Cal's orders were always easy to complete. The black aura cut through the night. Bang! Bang! The walls surrounding the guild fell and the front yard was turning into a mess. A real monster appeared in front of the mercenaries' guild that the Liban city's underworld feared. While all of that was going on, Cal started to think after hearing the noises coming from behind him. Looks like Choi Han is doing things properly. He was usually good at doing things like this well. Human. Choi Han seems to want to destroy everything. Choi Han is really good at destroying buildings. Cal ignored Rayon, whom he couldn't tell whether he was praising or bad-mouthing Choi Han as he quickly started to move. Arm really showed up. Crazy. The sword master came on his own. Why would a sword master come to a place like this? Son of a bitch, am I going to die? The entire guild building was in a mess. A sword master had appeared and was causing a mess. How many people could remain calm in such a situation? Fear and despair filled their hearts as they all quickly started to move. The only common action was that they were all heading down the building. However, Cal watched them leave as he headed up. His quick movements were stealthy thanks to Rayon's flight magic and the sound of the wind. Human? To the left, Rayon also served as his GPS. Cal quickly arrived at a floor and could see a fancy door in front of him. Human. The strongest human in the mercenaries' guild is here. This must be the guild leader's room. Cal held back a happy hum from coming out of his mouth as he headed toward the fancy door. Bang. The door opened at that moment. Ah, so scary. A couple people darted out of the fancy door as Cal flinched in shock. Oh, it is the strongest human and the strongest ones after him. Cal started to smile. This must be the mercenaries' guild leader and his subordinates. Cal moved to a corner, and the guild leader and his subordinates naturally did not notice Cal, who was invisible thanks to a dragon's magic, and continued heading down. Boss Mostu was not lying. Guild leader Nim, it's a sword master. What do we do? We can't avoid it. We will lose face if we do. We need to fight him even if we face some losses. We can't do anything even if some people end up dying. Cal listened to the conversation between the guild leader and his subordinates as they walked past him. Guild leader Nim, but isn't it weird? Unless Arm really went crazy, would they openly kill mercenaries? He's right. Guild leader, according to Mostu, their outfits were shabby as well. Are we sure they are from Arm? We'll know once we see him. The building shook at that moment. Boom, a loud vibration came from the ground. Gasp. Hurry, we need to hurry down. The guild leader and his subordinates quickly headed down. Cal had a serious expression on his face once the corridor was empty. Just how much of a mess is Choi Han causing? Why is the building shaking? Cal was confused, but he needed to move as he heard Rayon's voice. Human? There seems to be a magic safe. Huo, someone at the Mercenaries Guild leader's level should be able to have a magic safe instead of a regular safe. Human. If it is a magic safe, then the great and mighty Rayon Meru can open it without breaking it. Dragons really were great and mighty. Cal put on and hung down on the ground and leisurely walked into the guild leader's office. He then stood in front of the desk that Rayon guided him to. They always hide it in a place like this. There should be a safe underneath the desk instead of hidden in a wall. He just needed to loot that safe. Cal pushed the desk. It did not move. Sigh, you're so weak. Move. Meow, meow. Cal heard the voices of the children averaging 9 years old. However, he did not move and pushed hard once again. The desk finally moved. All right, weak human. I understand. Cal ignored Rayon's comments. He watched the desk slowly moving as he waited for the safe to appear. He then became anxious. A door appeared. It was a door and not a safe. Is the safe inside here? It was the moment he had that mistaken thought. Human, move. I will remove the magic lock. But this safe is really big. The mercenaries are rich, oh. The corners of Cal's mouth continued to go up. Rayon opened the magic safe as his mouth had curved into the shape of a crescent moon. Screech, the heavy iron door was opened. An area the size of a small room at an inn appeared. There were things inside that were shining. Gold, jewels, and money filled this safe that was the size of a room. Oh, what glorious sight. I never expected to see something like this in my life. Sob, no, I mean after death. Sob, oh beautiful, the fiery thunderbolt's teary voice could be heard. Cal slowly headed into the room that was shining with a golden light. He then took out the potato sack. Let's pack it all. Meow, meow. I'm so excited. I mean, all right, human. Cal could not see them, but he could feel that the children averaging 9 years old were excited as they moved. He removed the smile from his face and slowly stuffed gold bars into the potato sack. How fun. It was enough to wash away all of the stress from the past war. Cal felt someone patting on his leg at that moment. He couldn't tell who it was until he heard Ainz's voice because they were all invisible. This seems to be important. Ainz handed him a small glass box with some papers inside. Cal could not see Ainz, however. He could see the glass box and picked it up. He stared at the glass box for a while before closing his eyes and then reopening them. He then handed a gold bar to where he expected Ainz to be. Silence filled the area. This is for all of you. He could hear them gasp. I don't know why he is doing this. Even I don't know why he is doing this time. Something's fishy. Nuna, I don't think you should accept it. Human, are you okay? You can't go crazy just because you are too happy. Didn't you see that lunatic Clope? You become weird if you lose your mind. The children averaging 9 years old were in shock. However, Cal hugged the glass box and started to laugh. Ha 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 ha. The loud voice echoed inside the safe, the document that was visible through the glass box. It was a 5-year-old document with a simple title. He could also see the signatures on the document. Cal's eyes started to sparkle. These punks really did all sorts of things in the dark. Why would the merchants and the mercenaries guild need an agreement about the underworld? Especially one that involved a thug-like group such as Mostu. It meant that they all worked together to scrape up all of the dirty money. No matter where you go, there are always corrupt people in guilds. Whether it was Korea or this world, the rotten ones were all similar. This was why the good guilds were suffering. One of Kim Rock-Soo's jobs back on Earth was to quietly take care of these rotten ability users' guilds. That was the way to lessen the chaos. Looks like I can quietly take care of them. Cal was drawing up a future beyond the mayor election in 2 months. This was something he could use at that moment. The safe was completely emptied while he was thinking about that. Rayon, who had been shocked at the gold bar that Cal had offered, quickly used his magic to store everything away because he was worried that Cal would give them away if he didn't do it quickly. Cal picked up the gold bar that the children averaging 9 years old were ignoring on purpose. He put it in a different small spatial pocket bag as he started to speak. I'll keep this here, so let me know if you need it. I'll give it to you then. I don't need it. I agree with her. I have not lost my mind. They throw a fit when I give them too much too. Cal could not understand these children averaging 9 years old. That was why he looked around the empty safe and asked Rayon, "Is there anybody upstairs or downstairs?" "No, they are all on the ground floor." "Is that so?" Cal was relieved as he pointed to the safe and nonchalantly added on, "Just blow this place up then. The fireworks to start the true chaos were about to begin." One of the mercenaries grabbed onto his leg and fell to the ground. The guild leader peeked toward that mercenary and raised his voice. "Everybody gather together. Don't wander off. We will first prevent him from getting any closer." The mercenaries gathered together under the guild leader's orders and pointed their swords at the unknown assailant in a black outfit with a red star on it. There were bloodied and fainted mercenaries all around them. They would see that none of the injuries were severe if they went up to look. However, that was not something that these people could do while in a state of chaos. The mercenaries could not do anything because Choi Han was acting as if he was walking forward without any concerns. "Do you really want to become the mercenaries' guild's eternal enemy?" The guild leader's eyes were filled with rage. As a high-grade expert, he could not even leave a scratch on a sword master. It was worse for the other mercenaries. The unknown assailant wearing the shabby black arm outfit calmly started to speak to them. So weak. Grind. The guild leader ground his teeth. He could not attack nor run away. The guild leader could not hide his anger toward this enemy that was damaging his pride. What did you say?" That was what he had wanted to say. However, he could not say it. Boom! A loud explosion came from behind him. The guild leader turned around. His office had exploded. The beautiful fire shot up and decorated the night sky. However, this was a disaster for someone like him. His office with the safe had exploded. Someone leisurely walked out from that fire. He had the same black outfit and mask, as well as a single red star on his chest. That person went and stood next to the sword master. The guild leader then recalled Mostu's report. The sword master supposedly has a master that he follows. That person was at the core of it. Although we cannot tell if the intruders are actually from ARM, this person is supposedly a high-grade mage. The guild leader started to speak. You son of a bitch, get them. I told you to get them. Get them now." The two masked individuals quickly started to run, his office and the safe inside. The guild leader thought about the document inside the safe. It was the agreement he had made when he became the guild leader 5 years ago. They had profited quite a bit thanks to that agreement. However, it was a secret that nobody could find out about. Those bastards had come out from that location. Make sure to catch them. Catch them as our pride is on the line. The mercenaries started to shout as they chased after the two escaping masked individuals. A late-night run had started. "Where are we running to?" Choi Han controlled his speed while looking at the guild leader and the mercenaries who were chasing them with bloodshot eyes. The two of them were running quickly, however, still at a pace that could be chased. In other words, they were purposefully running away while allowing the mercenaries to chase them. This was Cal's order. Choi Han looked at Cal as Cal recalled the path he saw on the map earlier and started to speak. Liban City's ARM base. As Choi Han flinched after thinking about something. Cal had become the Pied Piper and was leading the mercenaries somewhere. ARM's branch location that was only known to people involved in the underworld. Cal was heading over there. As the Mercenaries Guild was located at the entrance of the underworld, it was not too far until they reached ARM's Liban City branch. ARM's building was an average-looking 5-story building. Cal looked at the building that was as bright as the Mercenaries Guild as well as at the people who were rushing out of the building and diligently rushing toward them. What the? Why are the mercenaries invading us? Who the hell are they? The people rushing out of ARM's building had to face the two people running toward them, as well as the angry mercenaries chasing them. The branch manager of the Liban City branch started to frown after seeing the two people. Are they perhaps the people who ambushed Mostu yesterday? There was no way that ARM's branch manager would not know about yesterday's incident. Although he did not know the details, he knew that someone had invaded Mostu's branch and that the mercenaries started to move. This was because they noticed the mercenaries rushing toward Mostu's branch. That was why they had been lying low all day while debating how to proceed from here on. ARM's branch manager started to fall into a state of panic. But why are they wearing outfits that look like ours? He noticed that the people being chased by the mercenaries had similar outfits as his own. They even had red stars on their chests. Mostu's faction had remained quiet until they found their internal spy. The mercenaries' guild had quietly moved because of their pride. Thanks to that, there was only a small amount of information Arm's branch manager was able to find out. Arm's branch manager made eye contact with the man with reddish-brown eyes. The man wearing the shabby outfit opened his arms as he looked toward the branch manager. "Oh, you came to greet us." "Thanks." "What? Thanks." It was the moment Arm's branch manager was shocked. Yeah. He could hear the angry shouts of the mercenaries. He could also hear the reddish brown-eyed man's loud laughter. "Ha ha ha ha, I'm so happy to see you." He really meant it. Cal, who was running with the mercenaries on his tail, really was happy to see Arm's branch manager. It really was fun to hit someone from the back. Chapter 274. A Beautiful Night 3. Cal recalled what his servant, Ron, had told him. Arm's branch managers have different uniform than the regular members, with theirs having 1 white star, 5 red stars, and a black feather pin. He shouted toward Arm's branch manager. "Why are you just standing around like an idiot?" His voice was very loud to the point that the mercenaries chasing them, Choi Han running with him, and Arm's branch manager all heard. What crazy nonsense is this? Arm's branch manager was so shocked that his true sentiments subconsciously came out. Cal was calm and confident even after seeing the branch manager's reaction. "Block these bastards now," he confidently and shamelessly told Arm's branch manager to block the mercenaries. "Branch manager Nim, are they involved with us?" Cal was so confident that the subordinate next to Arm's branch manager couldn't help but ask the branch manager. Although it was shabby, they were wearing what looked like Arm's uniforms to the point that they could not be sure either. While Arm's members were wary, one side was starting to become certain. It was, naturally, Liban City's mercenaries guild leader's side. Cal turned around. As a high-grade expert swordsman, he was able to keep up with Choi Han and Cal the most. That was why he could hear Cal better than anybody else. You dare. Although he was breathing heavily after chasing them all this way, the guild leader did not hide his anger at all. He could not believe it. He had chased them, wondering where these 2 unknown assailants were headed as they ran away. Although they were saying, "Ran away," the 2 masked men had destroyed the mercenaries' guild building before retreating, forcing him to chase them because of his pride as the guild leader. My safe. More importantly, his office with the safe was blown up. Of course, the safe itself was not the only issue. The agreement can't be revealed. It can never be revealed. He was worried that these 2 bastards might have gotten their hands on that document. That document could make the Mercenaries Guild lose everything that they have in Liban City. No, I can't think that way. They said that even a highest-grade mage would not be able to open the lock on that safe. I hired the only highest-grade mage in the Mercenaries Guild's headquarters to make it. The highest-grade mage who installed the safe had told him that, unless a dragon showed up, a human mage would not be able to open this safe, and that the only thing they could do was destroy it. That was the reason the guild leader could walk around in peace at all times. Yes, that's probably why this mage bastard blew the office up too. The guild leader tried to calm himself as much as possible. Although the safe explosion was painful to see, he could gather the money again. It was disappointing, but it was not as precious as that document. It was at that moment. You just keep chasing my tail. What? The bastard who was expected to be the mage had the wind gathered at his feet as he mocked the guild leader. That curve in the eyes would make anybody believe he was sneering at him. That crazy bastard wants to eke. The guild leader felt as if his world was flipping over. Clang, clang. The documents inside the glass box made small noises as the box was shaken. Cal was shaking the box with the agreement regarding Liban City's eastern businesses inside it. Human. The guild leader's face turned blue. Do you think that guild leader is tired from running for so long? It was probably more correct to say that it was this document and not the running that made him almost faint. Cal leisurely put the glass box in his pocket so that the guild leader who was looking at him, without realizing that his face was shaking, could clearly see it. He then looked forward again and patted Choi Han's shoulder. "I'll take care of things, so just follow me." Choi Han nodded his head and Cal raised his hand. I understand. Human Rayon understood Cal's signal properly. Cal stomped his foot. Tap. His body flew off the ground. He looked like a bird in the process. Choi Han followed behind him as well. Cal's body easily flew up thanks to the sound of the wind and Rayon's magic, creating a half circle in the air before landing back on the ground. Tap. Cal's body landed back with a quiet tapping noise. He turned around. He could see ARMS branch members looking at him. Cal had landed in the middle of ARMS members that had been standing there. Choi Han landed next to him. Cal waved at the members who were looking at him. "Long time no see." "Long time? Who?" All of them had that type of gaze on their faces, however. They all had to face someone's wrath almost instantly. "You bastards! You dare to touch the Mercenaries Guild?" Once Cal and Choi Han, who were in the middle, moved away, ARM and the Mercenaries Guild had to face each other. ARM's branch manager saw the frown on the Mercenaries Guild leader's face and immediately started to speak. He had enough information to realize what was going on now. "Immediately surround those two unknown assailants." This shout made the Mercenaries Guild leader flinch. ARM's branch manager did not give any openings as he pointed to Choi Han and Cal and continued to shout. "We need to catch them and hand them over to the Mercenaries Guild. The Mercenaries Guild's enemy is Liban City's enemy. Assist the Mercenaries Guild." The sharp subordinates quickly grabbed their weapons and started to surround Choi Han and Cal. That action made the Mercenaries Guild leader calm down a bit as he asked ARM's branch manager a question. "Are they not related to you?" "No, they are not. Guild leader Nim, you know how our side feels." That was the truth. The guild leader remembered how careful ARM had been until now. The branch manager continued to speak to the guild leader, who barely managed to catch his breath and calm down a bit. "We're not sure what is going on right now, but they are not from our side." "Can't you see those shabby outfits?" "Then what is that outfit?" "Excuse me." The guild leader pointed behind the branch manager. It was the location of where those two masked individuals should be surrounded by his subordinates. The branch manager slowly turned his head. He could hear the guild leader's voice behind him. "That outfit underneath the robe of that reddish brown-eyed bastard doesn't seem to be a fake." That the branch manager was suddenly at a loss for words. It was when Cal was leaving the third-floor room of the inn. Cal Nim. Choi Han had called to him and had brought the robe and mask. It was the shabby robe with the shoddy patching of a red star. It was the same as usual. The only difference was the outfit Cal had hidden underneath the robe. Once Cal took the shabby robe off, an outfit that any ARM subordinate should know about appeared. It was a black outfit with a red star. The uniquely tilted star shape that was different than any average star was accurately visible on that outfit. I asked Aruhaben Nim to make this. The shoddy work was the best that Cal could do, however. The ancient dragon was able to accurately make an outfit after looking at the dragon half-blood's clothes. Cal confidently spoke to ARM's branch manager, who seemed to be shocked while looking at him. "I'll leave the rest to you." "This is an order." The voice that had suddenly turned serious gave an order that seemed impossible to not follow. "Human, you seem a bit strong." It was naturally because he had used a bit of the dominating aura. The problem was that, although Cal had used only a bit, it had gotten stronger, so it did not seem like just a bit to the others. "Is it real?" Cal's aura made ARM's branch manager subconsciously brush his arms that were full of goosebumps. A chilling amount of dominating presence could be felt. It was a stronger aura than he had felt before when he had seen other red stars from a distance. Is it a mission that I don't know about? The majestic presence was so natural that it even made the branch manager question things. The one that became even more anxious at that majestic aura was the Mercenaries Guild leader. Are they really from ARM? Then is ARM trying to become enemies with all of the Mercenaries Guilds on the continent? The Mercenaries Guild leader started to worry. The presence surrounding the reddish, brown-eyed man made him think of the Mercenary King. Cal snapped his fingers at that moment. Snap. A clear noise filled the area. Huh. Everyone then noticed a teleportation magic circle appear. Uwung, the spell activated and surrounded Choi Han and Cal. It all happened in a moment. Rayon's magic abilities were now so amazing that they were almost at par with Iru Haben. Of course, a few people managed to react. The members who remembered the branch manager's order threw daggers toward them with urgency. Clang! Clang! However, the daggers were blocked by an invisible shield. Arm's branch manager started to frown. This was an individual who was strong enough to quickly cast both teleportation magic and shield magic at the same time. He was at minimum a highest grade mage. If not that, then he was an existence that was greater than a highest grade mage. Cal nonchalantly spoke the truth to the enemies as Arm's branch manager was trying to figure things out. The real Arm will not stop until Liban City's underworld is in our hands. We will only charge forward. Pat. That was the last thing he said before a bright light flashed, and they then disappeared. It took less than 10 seconds. The two unknown assailants had disappeared in a very short amount of time. The only ones left were the real Arm members and the Mercenaries Guild members. A situation that felt like hell soon happened for them. Cal did not care about any of this as he opened his eyes and looked around before taking the potato sack out. Rayon, here. Weak human, yes, I will carry it for you. Rayon grabbed the potato sack that Cal handed him. Cal started to walk again. We will move while remaining invisible from here on. Also, the night was far from over. There were still things to do. Choi Han and the children averaging 9 years old paid attention to what Cal had to say. We will stealthily sneak into the Mostu headquarters and just loot the safe. We must be as stealthy as possible. There was nobody in Mostu's faction that would be able to detect a sword master, a dragon, and the 2 cats that wanted to be stealthy. Human, why do bad guys have so much money? They have too much. Something is weird. I'm just glad we looted it all. Cal returned later that night with the potato sack filled to the brim, Liban City's underworld. It was now a total mess. Liban City was covered in shock as they welcomed in the new morning. Crazy. The Mercenaries Guild's building was hit by terrorists last night. The Mercenaries Guild had turned into a mess. I know, so be quiet. Haven't you seen that the mercenaries are all sensitive right now? My goodness. First floor dining hall. The adventurers sitting at the tables were all quietly discussing what had happened last night. But I heard that nobody died. I don't know either. The mercenaries are being quiet about it. Does the Merchant Alliance have nothing to say? Are you crazy? You think that they want to flap their lips and become enemies with the Mercenaries Guild? The Merchant Alliance was remaining quiet. Even the victims, the Mercenaries Guild, had nothing publicly to say. This was a city made up of merchants, mercenaries, and adventurers. Something big had happened to one of those 3 core sides. It was no wonder that the entire city was in a state of nervousness. Even beginner adventurer Bob, who was coming down the stairs to the first floor, noticed the heavy mood. That was why he was even more scared. What should I do? It's my first adventure, and I'm getting nervous. It's okay, Mr. Bob. Only luck will follow you on your journey. You don't have to worry. Thank you very much. Bob became energetic after hearing the nice words of the employee he had met yesterday. The nice employee said something else to support him. You can do it, Mr. Bob. Thank you. I'll see you again next time. Bob headed out of the inn through the first floor entrance. It was so that he could prepare for his adventure for the day. The employee who received Bob's thanks slowly headed toward the dining hall. Young Master Nim, over here. Okay. Cal, who no longer had that gentle expression on his face, took a cup of lemonade from Ron and headed toward the end of the hall. Here. There was someone raising his hand and calling him over. It is Goldie Gramps. Our Goldie Gramps really is good at being on time. Iru Haben was in his human form while showing off his explosively handsome appearance. There was someone wearing a robe next to him. Cal Nim. Choi Han, who had approached Cal at some point, looked at the table and called out to Cal with concern. Choi Han, it's fine. However, Cal calmly continued to speak. He's just in the process of dying. He's currently in pain as well. I understand. Choi-Han looked at the person next to Aruhaben after hearing Cal's response. The dragon half-blood. He was now human and had black hair and black eyes like Choi-Han. He seemed to be in pain from the clashing of darkness attribute and light attribute, as his face was pale and his fingertips were shaking. But Choi-Han was still not going to let his guard down just because of that. However, he still felt a bit sorry for the dragon half-blood who was cautiously looking around the inn. Anybody would be able to tell that he seemed to be amazed. It was similar to how he had been when he first found Harris Village. However, Choi-Han erased that sorrow from his mind and did not forget about his most important mission as he coldly looked down at the dragon half-blood. On the other hand, there was someone looking at Cal with a shocked expression. "You unlucky bastard. It's been a while, Aruhaben Nim." Ho. Aruhaben suppressed his flabbergastion as he petted On and Hong, who were both on the table. How shocked had he been after the children had told him about what happened last night, as well as from overhearing the people chatting at the tables. Does this bastard want to take over the world, or does he just find joy in causing trouble? At this point, he could not tell whether Cal was unlucky or just enjoyed doing things like this. Cal didn't care as he started to eat the soup and salad that Ron had brought over as he looked at the dragon half-blood. "Is it bearable?" The dragon half-blood responded to Cal's question. Yes. That was the end of their discussion. Aruhaben clicked his tongue after seeing Cal seeming so uninterested after asking him to bring the dragon half-blood here. It was hard to figure out what this unlucky bastard was thinking. He felt that the words he used to describe Cal were continuing to grow, however, that didn't matter as asking the questions he had came first. "What are you going to do with the money?" The cat children had proudly told Aruhaben about how Cal had become a thief of justice and looted the underworld. Of course, Rayon was babbling on in Aruhaben's mind right now as well. "Goldie, did you hear? We took the first step to save Liban City's underworld yesterday. My piggy bank is already half full. Let's go buy some apple pies later." Rayon was excited at how he was going to use that money. Gathering money was fun, but spending money was great too. "I'll buy you some too. I feel bad for you because they destroyed your home." The ancient dragon was flabbergasted, but it was obvious that he was enjoying it as the corners of his lips were twitching and going up. Cal slowly responded to the ancient dragon's question. "What are you going to do with the money?" The answer to that question had already been determined. "I plan to strengthen it a bit." The ancient dragon half-blood, swordmaster, and two cats at the table all seemed confused at this answer. This was the same for the invisible black dragon as well. Choi-Han asked for everyone, "What are you planning on strengthening?" What did Cal have to strengthen? I heard that his current glass plate was the best that it would ever be. Cal continued to speak as the ancient dragon and Choi-Han had serious expressions on their faces. "Ah, there's something. Throwing money away like last time." "Excuse me?" Meow, meow. On and Hong were included in the confused individuals. However, the pupils of the invisible 6-year-old dragon that nobody could see right now was shaking. Rayon recalled that shocking moment. He remembered how Cal Henitus had laughed while throwing the silver coins into the lava. Rayon was so shocked that he forgot to speak in Cal's mind and mumbled on top of the table. It was quiet enough that nobody else could hear, however. The others at the table could still hear him. The invisible dragon took his piggy bank out of his spatial dimension and started to speak. That. Throwing money away, that is very exciting, but also extremely shocking. Rayon had not forgotten the shock he received when he was just 5 years old. As for Cal, the cheapskate fire of destruction was currently cheering loudly in his mind. Chapter 275. A beautiful night for. Why would throwing money away be? The ancient dragon Aruhaben casually responded back to Rayon. "I threw away a lot of money when I was curious about the world too. It's a good experience to use as much money as you want as well." Cal was thinking that this calm ancient dragon was probably no joke when he was younger as well. Rayon seemed to have snapped out of it as he started to speak in Cal's mind again. "Oh, Goldie, that's not it. Human? Goldie Gramps doesn't seem to understand your shockingly exciting action." Aruhaben then asked Cal a question. When will you do it? Tonight. Tonight? Iruhaben thought Cal was going to spend a ton of money when he said that he was going to throw it away, using money at night. Is he going to drink some expensive alcohol? I thought he was going to go buy a couple mountains or something. I guess his scale is quite small when it comes to money. Iruhaben looked toward Cal as if this was unexpected. Cal touched his inner pocket as the others all stared at him. There was a bag inside that pocket. He. It was 2 billion last time. This time it is 5 billion. The cheapskate fiery thunderbolt remembered Cal talking to the Crown Prince about 5 million gallons last time. He recalled something else at the same time. The fire of destruction asked Cal a question. But can you use the golden plaque in the Eastern continent? Cal had not yet used the golden plaque he had received from Crown Prince Alberu for his personal use. That was why the Crown Prince's 5 billion gallons was pretty much non-existent right now. The fiery thunderbolt, who realized that, slowly quieted down. I guess 5 billion gallons is not possible. He did not say anything else after that. It felt as if he was probably curled up in a corner somewhere. However, Cal didn't care about that. He started to speak to the ancient dragon and the others who were still looking at him. I plan to do it somewhere quiet. Choi Han and Ain's expressions turned odd. Iruhaben's expression started to turn weird as well. At night and somewhere quiet. This was a weird combination to throw away money. However, Cal did not give them any more time to ask questions. He finished the sausage Ron brought for him before getting up and looking toward someone. Let's talk for a bit. Screech. A chair pushed back and the dragon half-blood got up from the seat. He didn't look too good while standing up either. He was now weaker than the average human, however. The traces of his light attribute and Choi Han's darkness were still clashing in his body and causing him significant amounts of pain. Follow me. Cal said that before heading to the 3rd floor of the inn, and the dragon half-blood quietly followed behind. Rayon was with the two of them. Sit. Cal pointed to the chair across from him and the dragon half-blood with an indifferent expression on his face. It was a neat but luxurious room. This room at the end of the 3rd floor hallway was for Cal's personal use. Cal nonchalantly commented to the dragon half-blood who was looking at him. How many of Arm's battle brigades are left in the Eastern continent? He got right down to business. That action made the dragon half-blood chuckle as he started to speak. Although his limbs were still shaking in pain, there was no such shaking in his speech. The 2nd and 3rd brigades are left. There were originally 3 brigades, but didn't you all destroy the 1st brigade? The 1st brigade, that was the strongest in Arm, was destroyed by Cal's group when they were coming from the Eastern continent to the Western continent. That was only possible because they were out in the ocean and had the whale tribe helping them. The dragon half-blood now knew that the ones who did that were Cal's group, however. Arm still did not know the people behind the attack. Cal did not respond to the dragon half-blood's question as he tapped on the armrest of the chair. Tap, tap, tap. The finger that was tapping in rhythm stopped at the dragon half-blood's question. Will you kill the 2nd and 3rd brigades as well? Although he had an indifferent expression on his face, the dragon half-blood was quite curious about Cal's plans. Cal indifferently responded back. Who knows? Cal sat up a bit and leaned his body forward. He then looked at the dragon half-blood on the other side of the table and continued to speak. Hypothetically speaking, Cal started to imagine a situation. It'll be really difficult, even with a lot of people, if you don't have money or a home, right? If Arm lost their base and their money there disappeared, then how and where would all those battle brigades and regular members eat and sleep? And if the mercenaries are chasing them around? It'll be really hard, especially if they don't have any money or a base, right? The corners of Cal's lips were slowly going up. Then the Eastern continent's Arm would want to ask the Western continent for help. But as you know, the Western continent's empire, Arm, and the alchemist's bell tower are all in the middle of a war and unable to help. Then it'll be really hard for the Eastern continent's Arm. Don't you agree? Cal frowned as if he felt sorry for Arm as he continued to speak. And then if people are going around saying, we are the real Arm, and destroying the mercenaries' guilds around the continent that are said to be corrupt, as well as rotten thugs in the underworld, They'll be really angry, right? The dragon half-blood's expression turned odd. He tried to piece together what Cal had just said. Wasn't he just saying that he was going to get rid of Arm as well as the corrupt mercenaries guild and the underworld? The dragon half-blood honestly answered back. Are you trying to something good? What nonsense are you saying now? Cal was honestly shocked. He looked at the dragon half-blood, who still had an odd expression on his face, and continued to speak as if he was frustrated. You know what bad guys hate the most? That's what I'm trying to do? What bad guys hate the most? The dragon half-blood tried to think about what the opposite of bad was. The only thing he could come up with was good. Wouldn't bad guys hate something that was the opposite of them? Is that why you are trying to do something good? Heh. Cal let out a sigh. He thought that the dragon half-blood was kind of airheaded as he started to speak again. Bad guys don't care whether other people are good or bad, nor if they do charity work or not. Look at the world. Bad guys don't care what other people do. They just get angry if they get things stolen from them. The more they loot corrupt mercenaries' guilds, there will be an increasing number of corrupt people getting angry. That was the case for the underworld and Arm as well. They will get angrier as they lose things one by one to the point where they are afraid by the end. That was why Cal created a plan like this. The real Arm will start to take things that belong to Arm one by one. Although Cal did not say this out loud, the dragon half-blood, who had a decent idea, asked Cal a question. His expression was serious to the point that his pain was not showing. That was similar to how his mind was right now. What do you need me to do? 6 months. What did he need to do for these next 6 months? That was the most important question for the dragon half-blood. He was waiting for Cal's response. The response came almost immediately. Rest. What? The dragon half-blood wondered what Cal was talking about. However, Cal continued to speak. Do whatever it is you want to do. Of course, it will be under supervision. You will not have complete freedom. Cal was planning on keeping the dragon half-blood under thorough watch. This punk was different than the sword master Hannah. Hannah had become enemies with Arm and the Empire, and they wanted to kill her, however. That was not the case for the dragon half-blood. In fact, he was someone that Arm would want to look for. That was why he had somewhere to return to even if he didn't stay in Cal's territory like this. That was why Cal had to restrict his freedom more than he did for Hannah. Cal did not know about the chaos that was going on in the dragon half-blood's mind right now, as he said what came to his mind to the person blankly staring at him. Ah, and there is no such thing as free. Why would Cal take care of him for free? I know you are in pain. You can still work here. Work? The dragon half-blood was honestly confused. He was thinking about what he could do for work here. He recalled the first floor of the inn he was just at. It was a space full of regular people and busy workers. It was a place that was always loud, and where the fragrance of delicious food that was made for breakfast brushed past his nostrils. It was extremely bright compared to the dark cave. But nobody had looked at him, even though he was sitting there. He slowly opened his mouth to speak and looked at Cal. Do you mean working at the inn? Yes. Nothing in life is free. Of course, Cal was planning on telling Ron to give the dragon half-blood a task he could complete, even with his painful body. Ron will give him the right tasks. He'll probably hand him a task like folding napkins. You can't have someone who feels pain every few seconds clean or serve dishes. It'll also be annoying if he suddenly fainted in front of a guest. You're an adult as well, so you need to pay for your meals. Pay for your meals. The dragon half-blood thought about that statement. It sounded weird to him for some reason. I'm going to work in that inn. I'm going to work with other people? He felt that it was extremely weird. He was already in pain every few seconds because of Choi Han's attack, but Cal was now saying that he was going to work. Why did he have such complicated thoughts right now? He recalled the sight of the peaceful inn. Cal just continued to say what he needed to say as the dragon half-blood was going through all of that. He didn't see a reason to carefully explain things to the dragon half-blood as he did for Choi Han, Rayon, and the others. Ah, I'm also going to ask your Ruhaben Nim to dye your hair. We can't let you be spotted by Arm. Is there a color you want? A color I want? Yes. The dragon half-blood's gaze headed toward Cal's red hair, the white star that he had called father. Cal Henitus, whom he had thought was a half-blood like himself. The dragon half-blood thought about the two of them as he sat there in silence. Cal had no intentions of waiting for him as he continued to speak. Let Iruheben Nim know once you have decided. He then got down to the most important business. Rest a bit, and then we will go attack Arm when I call you again. There was no smile on Cal's face. The dragon half-blood's expression stiffened as well. Cal asked him another question. How many central bases does Arm have? There was no need to know about all of Arm's numerous branches. All of that information was gathered at the center. He just needed to know where those were. The place where information gathers is where the flow of the organization could be found as well. The dragon half-blood knew where those locations were. There are two places. Cal was waiting for the dragon half-blood to continue, and the dragon half-blood continued with an odd expression on his face. Your subordinate will know a lot about one of those places. My subordinate? Yes, your subordinate, Ron Mallan. Cal blinked. The dragon half-blood calmly continued on. I was shocked after seeing him in the inn. Although I had not ever seen him in person, his appearance was important to ARM leaders 15 years ago. The branch managers and Red Stars who have been around for more than 15 years would know of him. Of the 5 households that controlled the Eastern Continent's underworld, Ron and Beacrox were the only head and heir that managed to escape. Their household was also one that was talented in gathering information and assassinations. ARM searched the entire Eastern Continent for the head and heir that escaped. However, they did not manage to locate them. 15 years later, they weren't trying very hard to find them anymore. However, the dragon half-blood remembered how ARM had acted in their search for Ron Mallan 15 years ago. Ron was important to ARM. Ron Mallan, the Mallan household's territory, is one of our central bases. The Mallan household was known as the Eastern Continent's greatest family for stealth and information. That household's territory was naturally a fortress. ARM had done some modifications as soon as they got their hands on it and made it one of their central bases. Cal subconsciously mumbled. This is driving me nuts. He had thought that the Empire business was urgent and that this side was more relaxed. However, that was not the case. There were mountains of old business to cut off here. Rayon, Choi Han, Ron, Lock On, Hong. Cal thought about the many things he needed to cut off and then connect back together. Of course, his life was still the most important. That was why he said the following to the dragon half-blood. You can head out now. I've said all that I needed to say. Cal decided to take care of what he needed to do first. Just like how the flap of a butterfly's wings can cause a storm somewhere else, you could cause a giant storm if you took things step by step. The people who did not see the butterfly might think that the storm came out of nowhere. However, the butterfly can anticipate a storm from the moment it flaps its wings. Cal was flapping his wings again in order to draw out one of these anticipated events into the world. The results of that would appear that night. Iruheben raised his head while Choi Han on, and Hong remained silent. The night wind was blowing past them. They were currently at the Gray Eye Forest. The ancient dragon was looking up at the night sky that had stars, but no moon, as it was the night of the new moon, before lowering his head to look back at the place where Cal had earned the sky eating water. He could see the large lake that looked like a human eye. The water that used to be gray was now normal in color, such that even the stars could be reflected off of it. Cal was standing by that lake. Rayon was flying around in nervousness around him. The ancient dragon started to speak as he watched the two of them. I thought you were throwing money away. Cal continued to walk toward the large lake with the others behind him. Yes, I will throw money away. He had a calm expression on his face. However, Iruheben, Choi Han on, and Hong could not help but be confused. Rayon shouted to Cal at that moment. Human, let me know if you need my piggy bank. I can give it to you at any moment. Splash! The water in the lake hit Cal's shoe and made a noise. The tip of Cal's foot was now touching the water. He could hear Iruheben's pressing tone. Are you throwing money into the lake? It sounded unbelievably weird. Didn't you say you were going to strengthen something? You're going to strengthen something by throwing money into the lake. There's no way humans who possessed powers of nature would give you such a trial. Iruhaben could see Cal turning around. Someone was rambling loudly in Cal's mind right now. Finally. Finally. Finally another chance at a happy moment that I would happily die again for. He's so crazy. Cal ignored the fiery thunderbolt and started to speak. Why would I throw money into the lake? What? Then where will you throw it? Iruhaben started to speak again. He had calmed down a bit. Are you planning on using all of the money you earned from the underworld? There's no way an ancient power would give you a trial like that, so tell me what is going on. I will help you. I have a lot of money as well. I'm not sure. Cal shrugged his shoulders and took a small item out of his pocket. He had no hesitations as his instincts were telling him that strengthening this ancient power would not affect his plate. A small magic bag appeared on top of his hand. The only one to recognize that item was next to him. Human? T, that is? Rayon was shocked. Rayon knew about that bag. It was last seen at the VVIP auction in the Caro Kingdom. It was used to trade with the bishop of the Caro Kingdom's Church of the Sun God. Cal and the bishop had conducted their own auction with the jewel called the Knight's Exaltation. 15. However, it is impossible to give you anything more than 10 billion today. Cal had asked, and the bishop had responded, how much? 20. How much? 22. Cal had said one last thing when the bishop called out 22 billion. 23. You bastard. The Knight's Exaltation had been sold for 23 billion pounds. The bishop had thrown him a small money bag. It was a bag with spatial dimension magic on it. Here, 10 billion pounds. The bag with 10 billion pounds had appeared in front of Rayon's eyes again. Cal had given the pouch to Billows in order to purchase the Wolf King's diary. Naturally, that item that was no more than a relic of a beast person to other people, and thus would not cost the entire 10 billion pounds. It was much cheaper. Thanks to that, the Wolf King's diary as well as the remaining money was returned to Cal. Cal had put a portion of the money he got from the Sinkton Merchant Guild's guild leader for selling the Determination of Fire into this bag as well. For reference, the Determination of Fire was sold to the Sinkton Merchant Guild's guild leader Plavin Sinkton for 30 billion pounds. 30 billion pounds. What crazy nonsense. Cal recalled the shocked expression on the face of the Sinkton Merchant Guild's guild leader. Just a small portion of that money was in this bag. The money earned from both the bishop of the Church of the Sun God and the Empire's Sinkton Merchant Guild was gathered together in this bag. The young dragon's pupils were fervently shaking. He subconsciously shouted out, "That bag is a 10 billion pound bag. This is shocking." Silence filled the area. Forget Choi Han On and Hong, but even Iruhaben could not say anything this time. The moment a gust of wind brushed past them, Cal also took out Rayon's special potato sack. The way he took things out one by one made Iruhaben let out a comment. This crazy bastard. It was at that moment. Uong Iruhaben's expression changed. The ground started to rumble. He could also feel the power of nature. It was the most destructive of natural powers, something that could even destroy itself. Fire. He could feel the power of fire. The cheapskate shouted in Cal's mind at that moment, "You're crazy. 10 billion, 10 billion, 10 billion. The fire of destruction, that cheapskate fiery thunderbolt, had heard what Rayon had just said. Cal could feel the power of fire running wild inside of his body. 10 billion. 10 billion? Cal hesitated for a moment. Did he go nuts? The fiery thunderbolt seemed to be extremely excited. It was the moment Cal's expression turned odd. He heard the Super Rock's voice for the first time in a while. "This is bad." The Super Rock continued to speak in a concerned voice. "The power that burned the North will appear again." The Super Rock described the current situation in a few words. "It's the second coming of a disaster." Disaster? Cal flinched as he looked down. Boom, an incomparable rumbling was shooting out from the ground. Cal could feel the wild fire inside of his body. Fire was weak against water. However, this fire had fought against the sky-eating water, which was so strong that a god had to suppress it. Fire was not weak. It symbolized the thing that was in its full name: destruction. Ahahahaha. It's a party, a grand old party. I'll burn everything. Cal frowned because the fiery thunderbolt was too loud before opening his eyes wide. Shit, the eye-like lake. That lake was starting to change. Sizzle, the water that filled the lake quickly evaporated and the bottom of the lake cracked open. Red fluid started to shoot out from those cracks. It's a party, a grand old party. The fire of destruction was figuratively jumping up and down in joy. Chapter 276. A Beautiful Night 5. Crack. A red fluid similar to the lava that Cal had seen on top of the 10-Finger Mountains was coming out of the ground while looking as if it could melt anything in its way. Cal shouted at the group the moment he saw the fluid. "Everybody dodge!" Someone shouted in response. "Flight!" Choi Han on, and Hong's bodies shot up into the air. Iruhaben had used flight magic on them. However, Choi Han was looking down even as his body flew up. This the moment the red fluid that reminded him of hell appeared at the bottom of the lake. It shot up as if it wanted to eat up the sky. It was as if a downpour was coming from the ground as that red fluid continued to shoot up. The ground was shaking. The ground at the bottom of the lake started to crumble as if it could not handle this red fluid. It shot up similar to the pillar of fire that Choi Han had seen many times already. "Cal Nim?" It turned into a tsunami and rushed toward Cal. Cal watched the fire heading toward him and started to think. Fuck, he thought that he made the wrong decision. Ahahahaha, kek, ha. He probably shouldn't have touched this crazy, fiery thunderbolt that was laughing so hard that he choked. Cal watched the lava approach him as he stood there with the money bag in one hand and a shocked expression on his face. Cal heard the voice of a woman in his head at that moment fly up. Cal flinched. Cal had heard this voice only once before, the sound of the wind. It was the voice of the thief from when he earned that ancient power. The person who had only communicated by creating small whirlwinds to guide him toward divine items had revealed her presence for the first time since Cal obtained her. The woman who had escaped with a divine item, the thief who had lost her freedom and died underwater, was speaking. The wind is what knows fire the best. Fire and wind could not be separated. They wrapped around each other in order to create an even greater disaster. Cale could feel the wind that appeared by his feet on its own. The wind appeared the moment the fire was about to get stronger. Cal found this to be odd, but he still stomped his feet and kicked off the ground. Cal shot up into the air with the wind. Boom! The ground that he just flew off of was now covered in lava. The lava seemed to not be satisfied with just gulping up the lake, as it continued to gulp up the surrounding area. It quickly continued to grow its territory until it ran into the barrier the ancient dragon Olean had left behind. Bang, bang. Vines appeared out of the barrier to fight off the lava. However, the lava easily ate up the vines. It melted everything. I didn't expect it to be such a strong power. Iruhaben was at a loss for words. Iruhaben had reactivated Olean's barrier that he had broken in order to bring Cal here last time as soon as they returned to the Gray Eye Lake. Although the sky-eating water was gone, he did it so that those few traces of Olean could remain. Furthermore, it was also better to have it up as he never knew what Cal might do. However, that barrier was about to break apart now. "You unlucky bastard." Iruhaben looked toward Cal in shock, however, he could not approach him to speak. The fire is running wild. A red tint was surrounding Cal's body. Red light was coming out of his body as if he was surrounded in fire. Furthermore, he could feel the presence of a fire running wild in Cal's body. Cal was aware of what was going on in his body as well. Ugh. It was because it was causing him issues. It was not that he was in pain. It was just hot. It was still early March, but it was extremely hot. Why did I think I could strengthen something with this body of mine? Cal subconsciously unbuttoned the top button of his shirt as he let his frustration take over. He had done it subconsciously because of the heat. Hot breath was coming out of his mouth. However, Cal could not just blankly stand there. The lava started to aim for Cal once again. It directed a tsunami of lava toward Cal, who was barely floating in the air thanks to the sound of the wind, as if it did not care about Olean's barrier at all. Ancient powers were things you had to earn on your own. Cal could not have someone else use flight magic on him right now. He continued to hear the voice of the sound of the wind in his mind. Nobody could stop us when we fought together. The fire of destruction, that cheapskate, was called a hero. The thief who had to live in hiding helped him every so often. Nobody was able to stop them whenever they fought together against an enemy. Nothing anybody did could stop them. They just ate up any obstacle and made their bodies even bigger. The fire needs to regain its original powers for me to be able to use my true powers as well. What? Cal's body flinched as he looked toward the lava that was heading toward him. The true power of the sound of the wind. There is more to a free wind's power than just movement and whirlwinds. Wind exists everywhere. Whether it is the trees, the ground, fire, water, and even the people living in the world, the wind and the flow of air always exists around all of them. That is why it is most beautiful when it is with someone else rather than when it is alone. Although she was a thief, she always helped her friends. That was why she had helped the fire become the most destructive fire, the ground become the strongest ground, the tree become the sturdiest tree, and even helped the water fly across the wide ocean in order to reach the eastern continent. When you use a divine item in the future, Cal started to frown again. A divine item? Cal currently had a total of 3 divine items in his possession or left in someone else's possession. The war god's watering can from the north, the condemnation of the sun, and the method to kill death. Why was she suddenly talking about them? Remember that I am here when that moment comes. However, the sound of the wind chose to become silent once again. Instead, the voice of the crazy person filled Cal's mind. What are you doing? Hurry up and throw the money. Uung, the lava gathered together and charged toward Cal, who was slowly floating down to the ground. The fiery thunderbolt loudly urged Cal on at the same time. What are you doing? Let's have some fun. Why are you doing nothing? Huh, Kekek, it's time to run wild. Cal started to frown more, while the lava charged even faster toward Cal as if it was responding to his frown. Choi Han and Hong, who were watching this unfold, flailed their legs in the air in order to try to approach Cal. Cal Nim, it seems too dangerous. It was at that moment. So loud. You stupid cheapskate. Excuse me? Choi Han flinched and asked in confusion. However, Cal did not pay any attention to Choi Han as he put his hand in the money bag. He then started to smile. The whirlwind around his feet slowly dwindled as his body slowly headed down to the lava. His body was extremely sweaty from the heat both inside and outside his body. However, Cal's eyes started to sparkle. The bag that originally had 10 billion crowns was left with 5 billion crowns after purchasing the Wolf King's diary. He had then added 3 billion of the 30 billion crowns he had taken from the Sington Merchant Guild leader. There was a total of 8 billion crowns. These were not silver coins, like last time, but gold coins. In addition, he had the gold coins of the eastern continent that he had looted from the bad guys. 10 billion. It's probably over that amount. Cal was someone who knew how to use money when he spent it. He had already put aside enough money to feed himself and those around him for the rest of their lives. I should use my remaining money for times like this. When else would I use it? He put some strength into the hand he placed inside the money bag. There was only one thing he planned to do. The money bag with spatial dimension magic. Reap, the money bag was ripped from the inside. The spatial dimensional magic slowly started to break down. The sound of gold coins hitting each other could be heard through the tier. Cal happily shouted toward the lava wave that was about to hit him. Here you go, you cheapskate. This is the taste of money. Reap, the spatial pocket bag, was completely ripped apart. At the same time, Cal used the wind once more to shoot up into the sky. However, a radiant light followed his trajectory. You crazy bastard. Iruhaben put a hand against his forehead. Ha 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 ha. Cal was laughing out loud. Gold coins started to pour out of the destroyed money bag. Even without the moon, the starlight and the red light coming from the lava was enough to let this radiant gold light brighten the area. Rayon shouted with a shocked expression as he held his piggy bank tightly against his chest. It's a money rain. It's raining gold. It is shocking but exciting. This is huge. The gold coins fell into the lava. Ooh, a noise that sounded like someone crying started to come out of the lava. This was the accurate description of that noise. Suab, the smell of gold that is more luxurious and sturdier than silver. Suab, it's gold. Oh my goodness, gold coins continued to pour down toward the lava. Oh yes, you angel-like human? Oh, sob, oh. The color of the lava started to change as it was hit by the golden rain. The lava that was only red beforehand slowly started to glow gold, similar to the fiery thunderbolt. The red color that reminded them of hell slowly started to glow gold and turned into a rose gold color. Ooh-woo-wong, the cry of the lava continued to get louder. It was at that moment. So annoying. Cal's voice cut through the lava's cry. Cal then made a simple movement. Rip! The money bag was ripped in another area of the bag. Cal then flipped the bag over. Gold coins are pouring down. I, the great and mighty Rayon Meru, has seen a completely different world today. Cal then flipped the potato sack over as well. Human, you are great and mighty. Human, the great and mighty Rayon Meru approves of you. Rayon's shout was drowned out by the sound of gold coins and gold bars pouring down into the lava. The fiery thunderbolt became shocked, Cal started to smile. The fiery thunderbolt was definitely shocked. This looks like it might be over 10 billion. Cal did not care as he continued to pour out the gold bars. He'll make more money if he loots Arm and the mercenaries again. And he still had 13 billion pounds to get from the bishop, as well as tens of billions of other monies stashed away. Cal confidently started to speak. You have to do it right if you want to do something crazy. Although he sounded indifferent, Cal had a refreshed look on his face. The expression on his face was extremely bright. I'm so happy. Cal truly was happy right now. He was the happiest when he threw money around like this. In the end, the fiery thunderbolt shouted out, I knew you were crazier than both devils and angels. Boom, the red fluid disappeared. Only a rose gold-colored lake was underneath Cal's feet. Cal headed down. Splash. The surface of the lake shook, however. Cal managed to stand on the rose gold-colored lake. No, the rose gold-colored fluid that was closer to the consistency of a swamp. He then calmly continued to speak. I still have more gold bars in the potato sack. There were gold bars that the lava could not eat floating around the rose gold-colored swamp. Cal had a skewed expression on his face while looking at this. The fiery thunderbolt's weak voice could be heard. I lost. Cal thought the fire of destruction that only ate up 10 billion had a small scale. However, he then looked down at his body after feeling an odd sensation. It was glowing. The thick swamp was glowing as it slowly evaporated. Rose gold-colored smoke rose up and started to surround Cal. He heard the voice of the fire of destruction in his mind at that moment, like being practical. The evaporated rose gold-colored smoke fully surrounded Cal's body. The others in the air could not see Cal. Instead, all they could see was a bright rose gold-colored light shooting up from the ground. While others chased after gods, eternal life, or even power or fame, all of which are things that cannot be seen with your eyes, I chased after money. The light was so bright that it seemed as if a sun was on the ground. Money was something that I could see and the most practical thing that I could hold with my hands. The fire of destruction was someone who liked practical things. It might be materialistic, but he didn't care. There was a simple reason for it. I found that to be beautiful. Although others called him a cheapskate and said that a hero shouldn't be so greedy for money without having any fame. And in the end, he was cursed at for turning the North into a sea of fire and still only looking for money. For someone like me who only knew how to destroy things. Money was a way for me to protect something. For someone who had grown up burning and destroying anything in front of him, money was a way to restore the things that he had destroyed. He was unable to control his powers and burned up a noble's paddy field when he was young. His parents had gathered all of the money they could to offer to the noble in order to prevent him from being taken away. That kind of money is nothing. We were able to save you. Don't forget that money is that kind of thing. His poor parents had worked hard to gather money, however, they were willing to spend all of that money for him. The man who had only known destruction spoke to Calai, must give a fitting reward to people who use their money for me. It had to be that way. That was his philosophy, as well as his way of getting rid of the grudge in his heart. Cal lifted his head up. The rose gold-colored light entered into his body. The parts that could not enter his body shot up toward the sky. Cal could hear the voice of the fire of destruction in his head. There's no reason for a fiery thunderbolt to strike from the sky. It can shoot up from the ground as well. Numerous flashes of rose gold-colored light shot up into the night sky. A strand of light that shot up from the ground looked like a spear that was heading toward the sky. Did you know? Bang, bang, bang. Loud noises could be heard as rose gold-colored lights exploded in the air. It was as beautiful as a firework show. The sky is strong and arrogant. Cal watched as the rose gold-colored lights exploded in the sky while he listened to the fire of destruction's voice. Be wary of the person with the sky attribute. Sky attribute? The fiery thunderbolt laughed and continued to speak as Cal started to frown, but it should be okay this time. Remember that. The rose gold-colored lights that did not go up into the sky and instead remained around him quickly entered into Cal's body. Who? Cal let out a deep breath. He was on the desolate ground where the lake and the lava were both gone. Cal reached his hand out while standing at the center of that hole. Crackle, a fiery thunderbolt that was different than before and had a clearer rose gold color seemed to be dancing on his palm. Human. The group all landed next to Cal, starting with Rayon. Everyone other than Rayon, who had already seen it once, was shocked, while Iruhaben looked at the fiery thunderbolt on top of Cal's palm as he started to speak. I've never seen such a sight in my 1,000 years of life. He could not take his eyes off of the fiery thunderbolt as he said that. There were a lot of things that fire symbolized: light, warmth, and even cooking. However, this fiery thunderbolt did not have many of the attributes of fire. All that was left in it was a purely violent and destructive attribute. The information that confirmed that was going off in Cal's mind right now. It was the voice of the super rock, that fire, the fire that had even burned up the north, that is the coldest part of the western continent. The fire that had stopped itself, even though it could have done even more. That fire is finally completely back in this world. The super rock. The Guardian, who was bitter frenemies with the Destructor, admitted that the free and scary Destructor's full power had returned. It was at that moment. Beep beep, the video communication device that was glowing red appeared in Rayon's front paws. Cal looked toward the group and started to speak. Looks like we will need to go back to the western continent. It was time to go back to the battlefield. Human, it is a call from the smart Rosalind. Rosalind was still busy taking care of the aftermath of the Indomitable Alliance. She asked Cal a question as soon as Rayon connected the call. What are you planning to do with the Bear Tribe and the Flame Dwarf Tribe? Are you going to keep them alive? Cal had left the Bears and Flame Dwarves with Rosalind while he took care of other businesses. He slowly started to speak. What was he planning to do with the Bears and Flame Dwarves? The Empire would need to face the strength of those who used to be their allies. I plan on making them hang on to me for dear life. Excuse me. We need to give our enemies a chance as well. Cal smiled quite gently. However, all of them, even Choi Han, believed that Cal literally meant what he said. Young Master Cal, we also heard that the Empire's Imperial Prince is planning on giving a speech. Cal's smile became even wider. Imperial Prince Adin was finally starting to reveal himself in the chaos of the Western continent. Chapter 277. Do you want to live? 1. In a prison cell within that castle. Cal was walking down the corridor of Castle Blang's prison hallway. He asked Rosalind, who was standing next to him, a question: Are the Flame Dwarves doing well? Rosalind scoffed at Cal's casual question. The Bear Tribe and the Flame Dwarf Tribe had been taken prisoners after their defeat. They were moved to Castle Blang, which was close to the Gorge of Death, with the bears being placed in the underground prison and the Flame Dwarves being placed in the regular prison. Young Master Cal, I suppose they have been well. Cal and Rosalind made eye contact. She had a cold smile as she continued to speak. They've just been shaking in fear because they don't know when they would end up dying. Rosalind saw Choi Han and Mary, who had both followed Cal here, flinch at her response, however. She didn't pay much attention to it. Choi Han had followed Cal from the eastern continent, while Cal had called the necromancer Mary to come here. Rosalind asked a question to Cal. "Will you give them a way to live?" "I'm not sure." Cal stood in front of the large iron gate. This was a small area where all of the criminals were gathered together. Although it was called small, hundreds of people would still fit inside. "Commander Nim, you're here." There was only one door to go in and out of this area. The knights and soldiers standing in front of the door greeted Cal's group with nervous expressions. Rosalind gave an order to the knights. "Open the door." The knights bowed, and two soldiers immediately pushed open the heavy iron gate. Screech, the door slowly opened to reveal the area inside. The mages, knights, and soldiers inside were the first to be seen. They were stationed in multiple spots in the area, standing there with serious expressions and ready to act at any moment. Cal moved his gaze from them and lowered his head. "Human?" There are so many dwarves. The dwarves, a race that was shorter than humans, were standing in line in groups of 10 and looking up at Cal. Rayon continued to speak in Cal's mind. The dwarves seemed to be extremely scared. Not all of them were like that, however. The majority of them had scared expressions on their faces. They had no choice but to be scared. They were all chained and brought over to this area this morning. The joy from being able to see their friends and family after being separated in different cells in groups of 10 did not last very long. They had noticed that something was up. The prison guards were gone, while knights and mages who were part of the battle squads had appeared and started to keep a watch over them. Furthermore, soldiers stood in between the flame dwarves and created a vicious atmosphere in order to prevent the dwarves from having any silly ideas. Something is going to happen. The dwarves realized that something big was going to happen to them today. After wondering what that might be all day, they finally got to see the two red-haired commanders for the first time in a while, Rosalind and Cal. Both of them were figures of resentment and fear for them. The battle at the Gorge of Death. The Flame Dwarf tribe had bet everything on that battle. That was why they had brought out the wings and magic bomb launchers while they led their entire tribe into battle. The weak members of their tribe had stayed in the back, while showing their talented abilities with their hands, while the rest of the adults had all gone into battle. We needed freedom. Kainel, the current chief of the Flame Dwarf tribe, bit down on his lips. To be more specific, they wanted Arm to approve of their abilities and give them a territory of their own. They wanted to be able to turn even a small corner of the north into the Flame Dwarf tribe's territory. They were a part of a stupid tribe that was not talented in making magic devices. The memories of being mocked by the other dwarves were still vivid in their minds. That was why they continued to work hard, and now they could make some decent magic devices. The results of that were the wings that they had shown during the last battle. However, those wings were easily destroyed. Chief Kainel felt as if that was telling them that the Flame Dwarf tribe would never fly. "Looks like you are all here." Kainel's gaze headed toward one of the two red-haired commanders. It was Rosalind. Kainel's gaze was full of anger as he stared at Rosalind. It was a normal reaction from a leader who had led a tribe to fight for the other side. However, he felt fear instead of anger when the other red-haired commander started to speak. "All of you can leave." Cal Henetus. He stepped onto the small platform in front of the dwarves and gave the order. The Breck Kingdom's knights, mages, and soldiers flinched at his order and looked toward Rosalind. They seemed to be nervous. Although Cal, as well as Choi Han and Mary, who were standing him, were strong, there were still 500 enemies. It could cause an issue if they decided to act on their anger from losing the battle. The knights and mages had gathered here in order to keep them in check, however. Cal was telling them to leave. Rosalind looked toward Cal while thinking that this was odd, however. She soon nodded toward the knight who was the representative of the group. Clack, 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 stiff footsteps could be heard. All of them soon left through the only door out of the area. Screech, the iron gate slowly moved before it closed completely. Bang! The inside of this area was completely separated from the outside. The dwarves' gazes slowly headed toward the top of the platform. There was only one place to look in this area that had nothing but bumpy walls. Their gazes all stopped at one location. It was the location of the person who held their lives in his hands. Ainz, the flame dwarf tribe chief, looked toward Cal Henitus with fear. The person who fell, the dragon half-blood. Realistically, it was Choi Han and the whales who had taken down the dragon half-blood. However, the flame dwarves saw it as Cal who had created the foundation to defeat the dragon half-blood. All dwarves feared the power of dragons. Cal was the leader of the people who had fought against that dragon half-blood. They would not be this scared if it was just Rosalind standing on the platform. She could not defeat the dragon half-blood, so she was just like them. However, Cal was different. Chief Ainz, as well as the other dwarves, were all looking at Cal. He was the commander who had used the power of fire, water, and earth. He had turned the flame dwarf tribe into prisoners of war but had not done anything to them. He had not even come to see them until now. But that person had suddenly appeared. What would he have to say? Would they have to become slaves again just as they had been after being subjugated by the White Star and the dragon half-blood? Or would they not even have that chance as he planned to kill them? Cal started to speak at that moment. "You want to live?" Chief Ainz's pupils started to shake. Although nobody had said anything, the anxiousness of the dwarves could be felt. However, Cal did not tell the flame dwarves anything else. He closed his eyes and let the chaos continue in front of him. He heard Rayon's voice at that moment. "Human, it's time." Cal opened his eyes in response and looked toward Rosalind. She bit down on her lips after seeing Cal's expression. "Really? Right here?" However, she stiffened her expression and took out a video communication device and connected it. Ooh-wooong, the video communication device started to vibrate. The screen appeared on the bumpy wall of the area. "Oh, ho." A good number of dwarves were shocked. They could hear someone's voice coming through the screen. "The name of the empire is not light." A handsome face with a gentle smile appeared on the screen. "The Imperial Prince?" It was the video of Imperial Prince Adden giving his speech. Dwarf Chief Ainz subconsciously turned away from the screen and looked toward Cal, the Indomitable Alliance and the Empire. On the outside, the two of them had no relations to each other, however. Cal Henitus was currently showing the flame dwarves who were part of the Indomitable Alliance a video of the Empire's Imperial Prince. Cal and the flame dwarf tribe chief made eye contact. Smirk. He could see Cal smiling. It was found out. He's known about it all this time, the Indomitable Alliance, ARM, and the Empire. He was certain that Cal knew about it all. The sound of people gasping in shock, the rustling from people moving, and all other noises disappeared, making the dwarves all fall into a state of silence. The Empire worked hard for peace. Only Imperial Prince Adden's voice could be heard through the silence. Cal looked toward the Imperial Prince in the video screen. He could also see numerous citizens of the Empire looking up at Adden, who was standing on a platform in the plaza. They were waving the Empire's flag and not hiding their emotions. The center of the Western continent, our wonderful empire. However, it seemed as if their empire was slowly losing strength these days. The issue with the Church of the Sun God, Maple Castle, the destroyed palace, and the attempted assassin of the alchemist's Bell Tower's Vice Tower Master. The Imperial Prince continued to speak to the citizens who were watching the faltering empire. The empire worked hard for peace. This is because the empire is the center of the Western continent. The Imperial Prince, who was known for having a gentle smile, was not here anymore. His face that looked cold without a smile had an extremely serious expression as he proclaimed to the citizens of the empire as well as those watching through the screen. "We have decided to take back our lost castle, their lost castle, Maple Castle. The empire's pride that had been taken away by Tunka and the Whipper Kingdom. The empire's plaza was starting to heat up in this spring day. The citizens who still trusted the empire and looked forward to the moment that they would restore their destroyed pride, prepared to share their emotions. The Imperial Prince told them no, he spoke toward the enemies. The strong need not hide nor use petty tricks. We only need fair and just methods to show our dominating strength. Huo. Cal, who was an enemy the Imperial Prince did not know about, started to smile. Fair and just methods, eh? I need to tell Miss Lena and the jungle to hold on a bit longer. Cal quite enjoyed fair and just methods, and a show of dominance. Adden returned to his uniquely charming and confident smile and shouted as the heir to the only empire on the western continent. The Empire. You will be able to feel the value of that name with your bodies from here onward. Well, the citizens' shouts shook the plaza. They were shouting so loudly that it shook the area where the flame dwarves were at as well. The dwarves' gazes were still on the screen with the Empire's imperial prince's face. The Empire was declaring war against the Whipper Kingdom. That fact was etched into the minds of the dwarves. That was why they slowly turned toward one side. They could see the commander who was casually standing on the platform. Tap. Tap. Commander Cal Henitus slowly descended from the platform and approached the flame dwarves. He was at their level now. However, Chief Kaynell's face turned pale. There was a familiar yet unfamiliar aura coming from the approaching commander. It was the aura that they felt while they were pretty much armed slaves. It was something that their instincts told them to fear. Dragon fear. They could feel the aura of a dragon coming from Cal as he descended from the platform. However, Kaynell did not say that out loud. It was different than a dragon. Although it was different, this aura was just as strong as a dragon's aura. It was something he had never felt before in his life, however. It still made it hard for him to breathe, and made him feel as if he would die if he tried to attack Cal. The commander who was heading down from the platform stopped walking. He stopped right in front of Chief Kaynell. Kaynell raised his head to look up at Cal. This aura. Kaynell could tell how Cal had defeated the Dragon Half-Blood and the Indomitable Alliance. The commander started to speak. Do you want to live? The words that were said with a different aura than before weighed heavily and placed the area into a state of silence. Cal looked toward the dwarf, who was said to be the chief. Cal had already activated a high-intensity dominating aura as he waited for the dwarf's response. Chief Kaynell soon responded. Plop. He kneeled down. What's going on? Cal became anxious at the reaction that was more extreme than he had expected. The chief looked ready to shout something. It reminded him of the crazy guardian knight, Clope. Cal urgently turned away from the chief. However, others just saw this as a scary commander coldly ignoring the kneeling chief. That was why the kneeling chief started to speak. Please let them live. That was what he wanted to say. For a chief of a tribe facing someone who already knew about the Empire, Arm, and the Indomitable Alliance's relationship, that was all he could ask for. If his kneeling could save the lives of even a few of his tribe members from this human who was giving off an aura that was at the level of a dragon, he would be happy. That was why he could not help but continue to stare at Cal. Cal then turned back toward the chief after looking around at the other dwarves. The chief, who thought that his chance had come, tried to open his mouth to speak toward Cal again, but Cal was a bit faster. There is something for all of you to make. Dwarves were known for their abilities to make things. Chief Kaynell gulped down his fear from this dragon fear-like aura as he asked, What is it you need us to make? Are flame dwarves just sad creatures who need to make things and have it taken from us? Are we not meant to have freedom? It was the moment despair went through Kaynell's eyes. Commander Cal looked at Kaynell and the dwarves as he continued to speak. Make some wings. Wings. That word made the dwarves flinch. They had made wings during their attempt to win the battle at the Gorge of Death. However, those wings ended up being ripped apart and they had failed. The same wings? The chief asked with a shaky voice, and Cal thought about someone as he looked at the chief dwarf. Icarus. It was a character from Greek mythology. He had used his wings to fly up toward the sky before he fell to his death. However, Cal did not want another Icarus. He called someone else over instead of responding to the dwarf who was desperately waiting for a response. Mary. Yes, Cal Nim. The necromancer, Mary. The woman who was still wearing a black robe that covered all parts of her body walked over to Cal. Mary asked Cal who had called her over. What is it you need me to do, young Master Nim? Cal listened to her question and looked around. He could see the flame dwarves and Mary, as well as the closed-off area that they were in. However, Cal was thinking about the sky outside as he answered her question. He needed the flame dwarf tribe and Mary to make something together. a firebird. The location of the first battle with the Empire, the sky. He needed an overwhelming power that could dominate the sky. That overwhelming power would be created by these defeated flame dwarves and the necromancer that the sun god loathes. Cal preferred to show dominance with overwhelming strength, similar to the Empire's Imperial Prince, Chapter 278. Do you want to live? 2. Cal made eye contact with the individual who had been looking down at the ground. Can you do it? Kainel, the chief of the Flame Dwarf tribe. The dwarf who had been kneeling could see the smiling commander. Peek. The other dwarves were staring at the blank wall where the Imperial Prince's face had been. Although I know that the Imperial Prince is working together with ARM. That was why he had been scared of Imperial Prince Adin, who had been working with ARM and the Indomitable Alliance. However, this was no longer the case. Dwarf Kainel returned his gaze back to its original spot and slowly lowered his head. Boom! His forehead hit the cold stone floor. The chief confidently answered back. We will definitely get it done. They could do it. They will do it. He could not give such bland responses if he wanted to live. He needed to say something that put more certainty than that. Cal started to frown while looking at the desperate dwarf chief before his face quickly returned to normal. Why is he overreacting like this? He could have simply said, yes. So why was he banging his forehead against the ground in desperation like this? Cal felt that something was off, but decided it must be the dwarf chief's personal style and just put his hand on the chief's shoulder. Pat. Chief Kainel got goosebumps at how cold the hand that was placed on his shoulder felt. An indifferent voice reached his ear before those goosebumps could go away. I feel your desire to live. Work hard. The dwarf bit down on his lips. As expected, is will alone not enough, Firebird. Although he didn't know exactly what the commander was asking for, he felt as if they needed to make that in order to survive. I need to save my tribe, even if we end up being slaves again. The commander's voice could be heard again at that moment. Although you were our enemies, the wings made by the Flame Dwarf tribe were amazing. Amazing, the wings that we made. The chief flinched and slowly raised his head. He made eye contact with Cal. We will dominate the sky on the battlefield. Everyone else was silent in the area. Cal's voice started to settle within the Flame Dwarves. I look forward to the Flame Dwarf tribe making properly made wings with your hands this time. The chief felt the hand leaving his shoulder along with that statement. The commander did not tell the Flame Dwarf tribe to become slaves nor talk about anything related to the future. All he did was ask if they wanted to live as well as what they needed to make from here on. Was that the reason? These two problems filled Chief Kainel's mind as if he was branded with a branding iron. The chief did not need to look around at the other dwarves in order to know what was going through their minds. That was why he looked at the back of the commander who was walking away and asked, "Do we just need to make them?" That was something that the Flame Dwarves had done their whole lives. They had done it while being oppressed by the dragon half-blood and ARM and ignored by the other dwarf tribes. Did they just need to do that to survive? The dwarves were all staring at the commander's back. The commander responded back as he continued to walk toward the door. Dwarves are better than other races at making things. The commander didn't promise anything like, I'll let you live if you make it. However, Chief Kainel clenched his fists at Cal's next comment. I wish to see the strength of experts. Experts. Someone who had reached the top of a single specialty, someone who knew how to devote their lives to a single cause. Those were the type of people who were called experts. Not slaves, but experts. The Flame Dwarf chief slowly got up from his kneeling position. Screech, the only door to the area, opened once again. Cal walked out of the door that Choi Han had opened. Rosalind and Mary followed behind him. The soldiers, knights, and mages who had been standing outside walked back in once they left, and the door slowly closed again. Screech bang. The Flame Dwarves continued to stare at the disappearing Cal's back until the door completely closed. On the other hand, Cal didn't have time to just look at someone. Miss Rosalind. Hoo-woo, yes. Rosalind sighed before looking toward Cal. Her gaze seemed to be asking how he could do something big like that without saying anything to them in advance. Cal let out a cough after seeing her expression before taking a document out of his pocket and explaining to Rosalind and Mary. This describes the information about the Firebird. I just put into words what I had in mind, so I leave this task to the two of you. Huo. Rosalind held back a gasp and looked toward Choi Han. This isn't like him to prepare something like this in advance. Choi Han smiled back at Rosalind's gaze but did not respond back. Rosalind took that as something must have changed and shrugged her shoulders before speaking to Cal. I must be on my way now. I have a lot of things to do. I have things to finish with Miss Watira as well. Mary slowly moved next to Rosalind and added on. Cal Nim, I'll be heading out as well. I will be busy trying to create this Firebird. Cal nonchalantly waved at them as he did not need them anymore and quickly started to walk. While the two of them were heading out of the prison, Cal headed in the opposite direction, going deeper into the prison. He was heading toward the location of the worst criminals in the Castle Blang prison. It was the underground prison. He walked past the corridor with multiple cells lined up. The iron bars were clearly visible. He could also see the chained individuals on the other side of the cell. The large floor of the underground prison was packed full. GRR. GRR, there were sounds that resembled the cries of animals. Cal put on a twisted smile after looking toward the individuals who were glaring at him in the darkness as the light of the torch did not reach them. However, those gazes could not hold Cal back. Cal reached the last room at the end of the underground prison. It was located at the far end of the corridor. Cal raised his leg as soon as he approached the door. Bang! His foot ruthlessly kicked at the iron bars. Although this looked like the actions of a thug, only the prisoners, Choi Han, the invisible Rayon, and Cal were present. The warden and the soldiers were waiting outside the underground prison. What is it? The voice of the individual who was chained to the wall at this last cell could be heard. It was a cracked and dry voice. Cal could see the bear leader staring at him from within the darkness. The Breck Kingdom and the Roan Kingdom did not torture their prisoners. However, they had chained the enemy leader like this so that it would be difficult for him to think about escaping. Did they say that he was a mid-level administrator? He had heard that the bear that led the bear tribe in the Gorge of Death was a mid-level administrator. Cal recalled what Rosalind told him. She had shared the information she had heard from the northern kingdoms to Cal. The bear tribe supposedly has a king that rules over them. The northern kingdoms have not seen the king, however. There are ranks to the administrators that lead the bear tribe under the king. GRR. Cal sighed at the growls he heard coming from many of the cells. It was all of the imprisoned bears that were making these animal noises. They were crying as if to threaten Cal and let him know that they were still strong. Yes, crying. Cal could hear the cries of the scared animals. That was why he started to speak to the mid-level administrator, who was the leader of the bears in this prison. Did you think shrewd bastards would look like warriors because they pretended to be warriors? The crying immediately stopped. A shrewd tribe. This was the way other beast people referred to the bear tribe. Cal looked at the administrator before addressing all of the bears in the underground prison. I asked Chief Canel if he wanted to live, and he kneeled in front of me and banged his forehead on the ground. The administrator's pupils started to shake. Chief Canel. That was the name of the Flame Dwarf tribe chief that the bears had looked down upon. That chief had supposedly kneeled in front of Cal. He was probably begging for his life. I gave something for the Flame Dwarf tribe to do. The atmosphere around the bears changed. They started to think. The Flame Dwarves earned a chance. They had earned a chance at survival. It was natural for them to think that way. However, Cal had never promised the dwarves anything and instead had only given them an order. Cal noticed the change in atmosphere and confidently continued to speak. Although it looks like your king has chosen to throw you away. The bears did not seem to react to that statement. This was especially true for the administrator. It'd be a loss. The bears were able to be stronger than normal because of their high numbers. The king that the administrator knew would not come to the Gorge of Death to rescue them while facing a loss. All he cared about was a land for the bears to live on and a kingdom for him to rule. That was why the shrewd bears did not expect any help from their kin. Cal knew about this as well. But you see, The fact that they did not expect to be rescued did not mean that they wanted to die. These shrewd bastards knew better than anybody else. They knew that they would die for nothing if they died like this. The bears knew better than anybody else that they could not die like this. That was why Cal asked them a question. Since when have bears been faithful? Since when have bears been loyal? Tap. Tap. Cal approached the iron bars. He pushed his head close to the bars and observed the chained bear administrator inside. You aren't the wolf tribe or the lion tribe. They were not the wolves who would sacrifice themselves for their pack and family, nor were they the lion tribe who were proud of and attached to their pride. The bear administrator, who was in the darkness, could clearly see Cal, who was standing underneath a torch. He could also see the sword master behind Cal. You are the bear tribe. The administrator started to smile. They were not the wolves nor the lions, they were the bears. They were the tribe with the highest population because they were both strong and shrewd. Act on your instincts. Cal was telling them to follow their instincts as bears. The administrator's dry voice echoed inside the underground prison. What will we find if we follow our instincts? I guess you'll find out soon enough. The bear let out a laugh. He then mumbled to himself. Soon, eh? Cal had said that they would find out soon. That meant that the bears would soon have a chance at survival. No, not really a chance at survival. This human would not let us live that easily. The bear administrator's thoughts were spot on. Cal did not plan to let them live so easily. However, the fact that things would change was the truth. The bear started to speak to Cal, who walked away from the bars and turned around as if he was going to leave. I will be waiting for you, sir. I will be following my instincts until then. He was being respectful. Cal smiled at the administrator before leaving the underground prison. He did not hear any animal noises as he had heard when he came in. However, he could clearly see the eyes of the bears, who were clearly thinking hard about how they could survive. Cal planned on using them. Choi Han, who had been quiet the whole time, asked Cal a question once they left the underground prison. Cal Nim, will the bears end up being the bait? Cal said something else instead of answering Choi Han's question. You are quite smart. Choi Han and Cal were thinking about the same thing. Human, they are too big to be bait. The bears are huge. Cal shook his head at Rayon's comment. They were going to be bait because they were huge. They would be a type of bait that would be easily visible due to their size. It was enough of a bait to be seen by the Bear King. Cal Nim, where are we headed to now? Cal did not respond to Choi Han's question again and instead started to speak to Rayon. Rayon, die magic. Rayon shouted back at that statement. Are we going to go see the stupid Tunka now? It was now time to go see Tunka and the Whipper Kingdom. You're here. Cal became anxious after hearing Tunka's tone. Cal had just arrived at the Whipper Kingdom Palace where Tunka was located. Cal took off the hood of the robe he was wearing to hide the priest outfit only to see that Tunka had become even more muscular. However, the expression on Tunka's face was odd. Human? Tunka seems to be touched. Exactly. Cal could not help but become anxious after seeing Tunka standing there with an emotional expression just outside the teleportation magic circle. It was disgusting to see someone who was the size of a house having such an expression. Furthermore, he was shocked that Tunka seemed much tidier, dressed to look more like a commander and gave off a more refined demeanor. However, Tunka left his subordinates behind and approached Cal as he started to speak. You really came by yourself, but I'm not alone. Choi Han was behind him and an invisible dragon was with him. There's also more people coming. Cal was baffled that Tunka was saying something that was not true. However, Tunka just continued to speak. You were the first to rush over as soon as that imperial prince bastard, and the Empire declared war on us. The jungle was planning on invading the Empire right away, but I told them to hold back. Cal looked toward Tunka, who had a disgruntled expression on his face, and realized that Tunka's original personality was still there after hearing him call Adin, the imperial prince bastard. However, that disgruntled expression soon disappeared. Tunka started to smile so brightly that he looked like an idiot. He smiled like the main character of a cartoon as he happily shouted, Thank you. As expected of my close friend, what the hell is going on? Cal honestly shared his thoughts. You seem to be mistaken about something. PSH. Tunka smirked and responded back with an emotional gaze. No need to be embarrassed. No, I don't think that's what this is. I'm not embarrassed at all. Cal was flabbergasted. Human? Tunka seems to have slightly, just slightly, become a better person. He can realize that you are a good person and that you get embarrassed quite often. Cal was completely flabbergasted. Chapter 279. Do you want to live? 3. He couldn't see the person who could be considered a set with Tunka. Where is Chief Harol? Chief Harol Kodyang. Cal didn't see the crazy bastard born from the unfortunate fate between the master of the magic tower and the citizen. He was the calm yet insane bastard who hated mages and wanted to rid the world of magic. Clope is a peaceful bastard in comparison to this guy. However, he couldn't be seen even though Cal and Choi-Han had arrived, in order to avoid the eyes of the Whipper Kingdom's people who were hostile against magic. A teleportation magic circle was secretly created in the basement of the royal palace. It was a place that was under close supervision since it was a space used by a part of the royal family and the kingdom's leaders. That was why Tunka and his subordinates, as well as the mages dispatched by the Roan kingdom, were the only ones there. But Harol Kodyang, the one commanding the military operation and everything related to the war, wasn't there with them. It didn't make sense. Looks like something happened. Cal realized that something must have happened in the Whipper Kingdom. Did Tunka notice the look in Cal's eyes? Tunka started to frown. The combination of Tunka's big build and fierce looks made his grimacing face look scarier. Cal observed Tunka's expression and started to think, if he fought with that face, all the Empire's knights would be frightened. However, despite his vicious-looking face, Tunka looked at his subordinates and spoke with a sigh. "Follow me. We will head over to where the chief is." Tunka turned around and headed towards the entrance first. He could hear Cal's voice coming from behind him. "What's the problem?" Tunka hesitated for a moment before opening his mouth. It was something that Chief Harol was supposed to talk about with Cal, but it wouldn't make a difference even if he was told ahead of time. After the Imperial Prince made his speech, the Empire sent the Whipper Kingdom a secret correspondence. What? The Empire's Imperial Prince sent the Whipper Kingdom a secret correspondence. Cal, who had been busy meeting the dwarves and bears and completing other preparations after the Imperial Prince's speech, frowned at this news he heard for the first time. Why did the bastards who declared war on the Whipper Kingdom suddenly send them a secret correspondence? Creak. The door opened. Tunka could not see Cal nor his subordinates and looked straight forward as he stepped out and responded. The Empire offered a proposal. Commander Tunka currently felt angry and frustrated. Cal recalled the Tunka from the past who would smash everything to pieces and never looked back as he ran off. He liked that kind of Tunka. Unfortunately, Tunka couldn't act as he used to in the past due to his current circumstances. Suppressing his frustration, Tunka informed Cal about the current situation. The Empire stated that they loved peace and that we should surrender Maple Castle if we didn't want to see everyone in the Whipper Kingdom die. Cal could not believe it. The Imperial Prince of the Empire had instilled a sense of pride in the hearts of his people, as by stating that they would fight a fair and just war. While playing the part of the proud Imperial Prince up front, he was splaying out negotiations and threats behind the scenes. But was that bad? Not at all. In fact, he is doing very well. Blood is shed during war. People die under such circumstances. It was clever of the Empire to demand the return of Maple Castle through threats or conciliation or whatever, as opposed to war. Perhaps it was a wise move to use the position of the Empire. Furthermore, Tunka and the Whipper Kingdom are known as loners. The loners of the Western continent. It made it easier for the Empire to covertly pressure the Whipper Kingdom, who was known to be the loner. As such, Cal couldn't help but be wary of Imperial Prince Adin. If it was Crown Prince Alberu of the Roan Kingdom, he wouldn't act as Adin had done. Alberu keeps his promises to his people. If the people were told that they would be fighting fairly, that is what he would have done. This was the reason Cal thought Alberu was the most similar yet different from him. It was also the reason why Imperial Prince Adin was similar to Crown Prince Alberu, but ultimately different as well. This made Cal feel uncomfortable with Adin. Adin's resemblance to Crown Prince Alberu meant that Adin was somewhat similar to Cal as well, so Cal started to speak as he stared at Tunka's back. "And," returned Maple Castle, "it didn't end with just that. It wouldn't end with just that." The Empire's pride and ambition wouldn't let them just stop with Maple Castle. If that was the case, why would Tunka be worrying and talking so wearily? Tunka scoffed and answered Cal's question. "They want 100,000 people of the Whipper Kingdom for 80 years. What? They wanted what? This time, even Cal struggled to understand immediately. There was something that came to mind, but it was difficult to confirm that as the answer. "Harol will explain it to you. Follow me." Tunka walked out the door. Cal followed suit with a sense of foreboding. The Empire wanted 100,000 people from the Whipper Kingdom for 80 years. Why does this sound like the Empire wants the power to use 100,000 Whipper Kingdom people as slaves for 80 years? Cal followed Tunka out of the basement and sternly started to speak. "Let's get to Harol quickly." Cal had to meet Chief Harol more than anything right now. Cal followed Tunka out and looked around the Whipper Kingdom's central palace. It looks more extravagant than Roan's palace. Unlike the sparkling exterior, the interior had a completely different feeling. It's pretty empty. There weren't many people around. Furthermore, those who came and went did not have happy expressions. Cal, who was currently disguised as a priest, looked around the royal palace, which was the center of the Whipper Kingdom, and noticed the surrounding atmosphere. There's a sense of defeat all around even before the fight. Why was it like this? Although Cal couldn't tell what kind of atmosphere surrounded the soldiers and warriors because they weren't in the central palace, he noticed that the government officials, knights, and guards all gave off an air of defeat from their expressions human. It feels like we already lost. Why is everyone's faces like that? That's what I'm saying. Cal felt that something was off. He glanced at Choi Han, who was beside him. Choi Han, whose appearance was hidden with a robe, was also looking around at his surroundings. Seeing this kind of atmosphere is probably a first for him. There was a mood that made everything seem like it was limp and sinking. Cal recalled that mood and asked Tunka, who was in front of him, a question. "How many people know about that correspondence?" "About 2 or 3 people other than our side." "Our side." Those words referred to the natives who were the initial members of the non-mage faction with Tunka and Harol, which were namely his close subordinates. Cal finally realized what was going on. Those people passing us by with an air of helplessness aren't the people on Tunka's side. Cal started to speak. "It seems that there aren't many of those that are on our side at the Central Palace." Tunka hesitated for a moment and then answered. "Correct. As expected, you're very smart. Smart? More like it's just obvious." It was only then that Cal noticed all the people glancing furtively at Tunka while passing by. There was a mixture of discontent, dread, and fear in their eyes. Tunka's continued to speak. "This central palace is where the royal family stays." The Whipper Kingdom was still a monarchy. Tunka and the non-mage faction tore down the magic tower and emerged as influential people in the kingdom. However, the royal family remained the same, as well as the royal family's faction of the nobles and the government officials within the kingdom. Cal had arrived at the innermost part of the central palace before he even realized it. There were no more passers-by around them. In addition, there were familiar-looking warriors everywhere. This place could be clearly felt as Tunka's place. "This is the operations room." Tunka stood in front of the operations room. However, there were native citizen warriors glancing at Tunka as they stood by both sides of the door. Tunka asked the warriors a question. "What is it?" "Commander, it's just that." One of the warriors looked at Cal and hesitated, unable to answer. Tunka, who saw this, knitted his brows as he forcefully opened the door. Click. He was still the hot-tempered, unhesitating Tunka. Thanks to him, Cal could hear the voices past the open door. "Chief Harol, why are you rejecting the Empire's offer?" It was not a familiar voice. Tunka stopped in front of the open door. Cal could see Chief Harol as well as his advisors through the gap, confronting someone who was wearing a crown and surrounded by knights. The person wearing the crown and speaking, the one who just spoke, was the king of the Whipper Kingdom. Cal recalled the Whipper Kingdom. While the citizens were used as experimental guinea pigs in the magic tower, and the kingdom's people were heavily taxed and treated as slaves. The Whipper Kingdom's royal palace quietly spectated from the sidelines as they reaped the benefits given by the Mage faction. The Whipper Kingdom became rich from the magic items created from the only magic tower on the continent. Unlike the citizens of the Whipper Kingdom who suffered from poverty, the Whipper Kingdom's royal family lived a more affluent life than ever before. The king, who ruled the royal palace and the kingdom, flinched when he saw Tunka. However, he quickly turned away from Tunka and looked at the Chief Herald. "Chief Herald, say something." While the Whipper Kingdom's royalty watched the Mage faction from the sidelines, they also did not suppress the anti-Mage faction when they appeared. That was why the non-Mage faction kept the royal family intact after taking down the magic tower. The Whipper Kingdom's king never stepped in to manage the affairs of his kingdom. That king raised his voice when he heard of the Empire's invasion. He shouted at Herald with a desperate look on his face. "We're finished if the Empire attacks us. We're finished." Chief Herald bit his lips at the statement. It was to prevent himself from bursting into laughter. The "we" that the king spoke of was the royal family and the powerful elites at his disposal. The people of the Whipper Kingdom were not included in that "we." Herald was surer about that than anyone else. That was why he kept his eyes on the king, even though he was aware of Tunka and Cal's party. "Your Majesty, the Empire does not just want Maple Castle." The king and the royal faction said that they should accept the Empire's offer. "Your Majesty, isn't there another demand that the Empire made in that correspondence?" Chief Herald glanced at Cal and continued to speak. He recited the offer proposed by the Empire. Maple Castle must be returned, and a portion of the Whipper Kingdom's land surrounding that area must be included. In addition, the Whipper Kingdom must provide free manpower to develop the recently devastated Maple Castle and the surrounding area, as well as the portion of land that will be given to the Empire from this offer. Cal gulped. However, Herald was not finished. "The workforce is to be solely made up of the Whipper Kingdom's citizens, numbering 100,000 people, and the kingdom must fulfill this quota yearly for 80 years to promote the development of the land." Cal closed his eyes. Rayon's voice echoed through his head. "Human. Isn't that just saying the Whipper Kingdom's citizens will do all the work while they get all the benefits?" "Exactly. To demand that the Whipper Kingdom provide 100,000 of its able-bodied people yearly to work free of charge for 80 years was basically demanding them to send 100,000 people to the Empire to become slaves for 80 years. Herald's voice was heard again. "Your Majesty, don't you understand what this means?" The king flinched before speaking with a calm expression. He had steeled himself before coming to look for Tunka and Herald. Of course, he was only able to do this because he believed they would not kill the king right now. He spoke calmly and with a majestic demeanor. "I support the non-Mage faction." He then continued with a tight expression. "I would accept the Empire's offer." Herald started to frown. "I should have killed him earlier. Herald should have killed him when he tore down the magic tower. He had kept him alive because he didn't want to cause any more chaos. Now that time has passed, he couldn't kill the king so carelessly. If he revolted against the king and killed him in the face of war, the people of the Whipper Kingdom, who should come together and fight against the Empire, would be shaken." Herald swallowed his anger and spoke. "Your Majesty, no matter how you look at it, demanding 100,000 people to labor as such as basically making them slaves, isn't that so?" the king exclaimed with astonishment. "Slaves? Isn't the Empire simply requesting for a temporary labor force? If we just accept that offer, we can live." Herald was stunned. 80 years was temporary, and that didn't make them slaves. Herald found the king, who knew the Empire's intentions yet feigned ignorance, despicable. Even during the time when the Mage faction and the non-Mage faction were fighting, the king feigned ignorance and fully immersed himself in protecting himself. Chief Herald couldn't help but raise his voice. "Your Majesty, where will you find those 100,000 people? Exactly who was he planning to send to the Empire to become slaves?" The king answered immediately as Herald shouted. "It's not much. It's not much." Herald's face contorted with anger. However, the king spoke confidently. It's not like the non-mage faction, the natives, or the nobles are going. Aren't there many proud whipper citizens outside of the royal palace who could work in the empire? Cal swallowed a sigh. In the end, the king was questioning what the issue was, if it was just the citizens outside of the royal palace who were going as slaves, and not the royal family nor the non-mage faction. The king was confident. There would be no war and nobody would die. Isn't that quite peaceful? If the empire truly invades our country, we're finished. The king was probably just afraid that he would die. Cal frowned. Previously, when Tunka invaded the empire, the king had an excuse. He could simply tell the empire that he watched from the sidelines because he was afraid of Tunka. However, it was different this time, as it was the empire who was going to invade. Cal stared at the king, who was willing to abandon 100,000 of his people for 80 years in order to save his own life. He then caught sight of Tunka's fists that were trembling with anger. Tunka was silent. However, his fury could be felt. It was at that moment Chief Harol's voice was heard. Are you unaware of why people followed us, the non-mage faction, in our fight against the mage faction? Harol's eyes were cold. Harol wanted to get rid of all mages, so he led the people of the non-mage faction. However, he also understood the hearts of those who followed him. It was hard to make ends meet. That's why they followed us. He raised his voice again. Are you unaware of how much the mages oppressed your citizens? Do you know how many people died after being dragged and experimented on in the magic tower? The king flinched for a moment, but quickly glanced at the silent Tunka and started to speak once again. Even so, if we accept the empire's offer, wouldn't we all be able to live? If war breaks out, we may all die. You can't think of the empire as the same one from Maple Castle. The real empire is truly frightening. Chief Harol, the person who had pretended to be nice all this time, started to shout. The quality of life matters too. Even when the magic tower was in control, people lived. However, that was not truly living. Why did the Whipper Kingdom, no, Tunka and Harol, participate in the alliance between the 4 kingdoms and one tribe's goal to get rid of the alchemist's bell tower? It wasn't only because of their fight against the empire, the magic tower and the alchemist's bell tower. It was because the two were so similar. Harol's voice rang out. How is being a slave truly living? Your Majesty, even if they are alive, that is not truly living. The chief glared at the king. That sight angered the king. Even if he was essentially a powerless king, he was of a noble bloodline unlike the chief. Chief Harol, are you trying to attack me? Out of consideration for all of you, I said that the tribespeople and the non-mage faction wouldn't be sent off. Isn't that enough? We won't get hurt, the Whipper Kingdom will be peaceful, and everything will be great for everyone. Oh boy. Cal suppressed his feeling of astonished disgust and stood right behind Tunka. He could see Tunka's fists trembling. Even so, Tunka did not burst out in anger. He was holding it back. Cal realized one thing as he observed Tunka. Why was Tunka so welcoming towards Cal, who came to help? Was it simply because the time to fight was approaching? No. He was literally moved by the fact that Cal had come to help the Whipper Kingdom. This bastard is starting to think about and for the Whipper Kingdom. Although he was still clumsy and stupid, the bastard who only knew how to look straight ahead and fight was beginning to understand the weight of ruling a country. Geez. Cal held back a smile. He was supposed to be the guy who only looked straight ahead and fought. He would continue to wage war until the Whipper Kingdom, the non-mage faction, and Tunka himself perished. How did that future become so twisted? As a result, Tunka remained in the kingdom and saw how the people lived. He saw how Cal, who pretended to be a priest, treated the soldiers and how grateful the soldiers were for their help. As a person with influence, Tunka was able to see many aspects of life beyond war and power. He also started to understand the hearts of the people that followed him. Cal stood behind Tunka and whispered in a low voice, "Tunka." Cal saw Tunka flinch as he called his name and thought that Tunka was still Tunka. He was still the same Tunka who introduced himself back then as Bob. Cal spoke in a quiet voice that only those near him like Tunka and Choi Han could hear. Just go with your original style. Tunka hesitated for a moment. He then heard Cal's voice again from behind him. "We've got your back. Grin." Tunka subconsciously started to grin. The look in his eyes then changed. Although they were still full of anger, his eyes no longer held the look of repression as he lifted his fist. Bang! The door was smashed with a bang. Tunka's fist had smashed the door. "See, Commander," the king subconsciously gulped and looked towards Tunka. Tunka looked toward the king, who was surrounded by the royal knights, and continued to speak. "Shut up." "Oh, as expected of the do whatever I want, Tunka." Cal was impressed. Tunka was probably the only bastard who would look down on a king and speak to him so rudely. The king frowned at the sight, and the knights placed their hands on the hilt of their swords. The king thought about how Tunka had been calmer than usual these days and started to shout. How dare you speak to me that way? Commander, are you fighting wars is my job." Tunka ignored the king's voice as he strode towards him. Cal watched Tunka's back as he did so. Cal did not like Tunka. Tunka's disposition and actions did not mesh well with him. However, Tunka now seemed to understand the weight of life. Yes, Tunka had grown. Time passed for Tunka as much as it did for Cal, and that had changed him a bit. Tunka approached the king and continued to speak. "We'll win, so you just sit tight and think about your own self-preservation as you always have." Today was the first time Cal liked Tunka's actions. The world didn't need to be filled only with people like Adin or Alberu, the non-mage faction. It was because leaders like Tunka existed that even weak, yet crazed, people could win. Tyrants were bound to show their strength when they acted like tyrants. If he was a tyrant that also thought of his citizens, it wouldn't be too bad. Clang! The knights drew their swords. The blades of their swords were pointed toward Tunka's neck. The knights couldn't fight back against Tunka's sheer strength, so all they could do was hold the blade of their sword up. However, Tunka was not afraid of those blades and continued to approach the king. A small trickle of blood could be seen on Tunka's neck where a blade had slightly pricked him. Nevertheless, Tunka continued toward the king without hesitation. "Commander," the king desperately called out to Tunka, but Tunka, who was surrounded by swords, glared at him. "I've never lost a war." He never lost against the mage faction, nor against the Empire at Maple Castle. He never lost even once. Tunka had no intentions of accepting the Empire's offer. He recalled Cal and Choi Han, who stood behind him. As someone who always looked forward and fought, Tunka, for the first time, felt a sense of reassurance that someone had his back. Thus, Tunka glared at the king as he boldly spoke with a voice full of anger. "So, the coward can fuck off." He told the cowardly king to fuck off. Cal smiled as he looked at Tunka. Chapter 280. Do you want to live? 4. Naturally, the king could not hold back his anger and his body started to shake. "Why, you dare to speak that way to me?" However, all the king could do was stare at Tunka. Part of it was because he himself was weak, while the other part was because he could not tell the knights to attack Tunka. The Whipper Kingdom was in an odd state right now. The king only had the title of king, while the government and all administration fell to the military. Tunka was the center of the citizens and soldiers of that military. That was why even the knights guarding the king did not dare to act rash toward Tunka. They were people who joined the royal faction to save their own lives and maintain their benefits, so although they held their swords up out of loyalty, they did not dare to actually attack Tunka. "You..." The king was aware of that as well. As a result, he could only glare at Tunka in anger. Tunka observed the king with even more anger in his eyes. He then resumed speaking. Tunka knew himself quite well. "I don't have anyone above nor below me." That was why he could lead the way no matter where he was. And killing strong people is my hobby. He had stood in the vanguard and killed the ones that smelled the strongest. Of course, there were times that he had lost to those strong individuals. However, the enemies all eventually ended up avoiding him. Whether that was because they were scared or because they found him to be dirty, but either way, they avoided him. That was the important part. Tunka looked down at the king, who was willing to surrender in order to save his own life. The king felt as if he had become prey. He too had avoided Tunka in the past. He had given the excuse that he avoided Tunka because he was stupidly strong and wild. However, the truth was that he had avoided Tunka out of fear. The king's gaze slightly missed Tunka and headed downward. Tunka's voice could still be heard in his ears. Only think about how we will achieve victory if you wish to live. If you wish to live. The king gulped at that statement. Both anger and fear were making his body shake. One of the royal faction's knights started to speak at that moment. He had the title of being the captain of the guard knights. Your Majesty, what do you think about moving elsewhere if you have finished delivering your message? The knight captain flinched after seeing Tunka's gaze turn toward him. He was not someone who had become the knight captain because of his strength. For a kingdom like the Whipper Kingdom, where magic was abnormally developed in the past, the knights were weaker in exchange. The mages had obstructed the growth of strong knights because they wanted to maintain their dominance, and thanks to that, the knights of the Whipper Kingdom were likely to be people who gained opportunities with political influence or had a talent in sucking up rather than strong individuals. Commander, why don't you complete your tasks in peace as well? Tunka stared at the knight captain and the king before turning around. He then walked toward Chief Harald's side. Anybody could tell that he was ignoring the knight captain and the king. You damn, Your Majesty. However, the knight captain consoled the king from getting angry. The knight captain motioned with his gaze to tell the king that they should leave, while the king took a deep breath before walking away from Tunka and toward the door. However, the king's gaze was still on the correspondence from the empire that was in Harald's hand. He could respond to the empire if he took that away, however. All important documents were in Tunka's hands. You stupid bastards. You can't even see that I was giving you a way to live. In the end, the king shouted in anger before heading out of the strategy room. Cal let out a groan as he looked toward the king and the knights who left without even paying any attention to him. There was a simple reason for it. Human? For some reason, I don't like that punk of a king. It was because his mind was quite loud from Rayon's mumblings. 100,000 people are enough to win against the Empire if he goes to war with them. But 100,000 people for 80 years. That king doesn't even know how to do basic math. As expected, he is not as smart as the great and mighty me. He's so loud. Rayon seemed to be not fond of this king at all. On the other hand, Cal was just thinking that there were always guys like these no matter where you went. It's just the way the world works. Even in Korea. No, even on Earth there were people who did worse things than this king for their own survival when the world descended into chaos once. Furthermore, was it only the people in power that did that? Not at all. In fact, the majority of the people were like that at first. It was right after Cal, no? Kim Rock-soo had taken his college entrance exams and was working part-time at a restaurant. The violent upheaval had happened without warning. People ignored each other in order to survive. However, the world came together to support each other and return balance to the world quicker than expected. It was because there were people who were willing to help each other survive rather than step on each other. Someone had said that the world would turn to hell if the apocalypse was here. However, all people hated hell. That was why they flailed around however they could to avoid hell and realized something in the process. It was difficult to do it alone. They needed each other. That was what brought the people of the world back together in order to get back to a world that was bearable. Cal's gaze headed back to Tunka and Harald. He had decided after seeing the Whipper Kingdom's king that the best thing to do was ignore trash like that. However, it wasn't that Cal agreed with the king. Cal, just as when he had been Kim Rock-soo, was someone who wanted to turn this world into a decently livable place. You would still be lonely, even if you were happy alone in hell. Yes, a relaxed slacker showing off his money is the greatest way to live. Cal looked toward Harald and Tunka with a different gaze after thinking about that. There was the simply stupid Tunka. Then there was Harald, the one with a weird vibe about him whom Cal thought was even crazier than Clope. These two bastards had bloodshot eyes from trying to maintain this world of theirs in the Whipper Kingdom. That fact felt new but oddly familiar at the same time. He heard Rayon's voice at that moment. Human, let's loot that king bastard's safe. Let's loot him dry. Cal let out a groan at the 6-year-old dragon's suggestion that he knew he couldn't do but was quite tempted to do so. The others were watching as he did that. Chief Haral's eyes became cloudy. Cal Henitus. He had shown a terrible sight to the person who had stealthily come to help out the Whipper Kingdom while looking like a priest. No, it was not just terrible, he had shown the worst possible sight. Haral and the other chiefs in the strategy room remained silent as they didn't know what to do. Tunka approached Cal at that moment. He remembered what Cal had told him earlier. "We are behind you." Tunka thought about that and started to speak to Cal. "When the Empire made that offer to us." "Hold on." Cal raised his hand and stopped Tunka from speaking. The chiefs all had gloomy expressions as if they expected this response until Cal continued to speak. "How can we speak in secret when you broke the door? Is there somewhere quiet we can talk?" "Ah." Only then did they all look toward the door that Tunka had destroyed. There were guards standing there that were not sure of what to do. "I will lead you somewhere else." Chief Haral stepped up and Cal nodded his head. "I wish to speak only to you and Commander Tunka." "Fine." Tunka agreed right away, and Cal could soon move to a quieter location. Cal handed Choi Han, who was stiffly standing there, a teacup before picking up another one for himself and asking Tunka a question. "You think the Empire wants the Whipper Kingdom to accept that offer?" Haral responded to the question instead. "No, I believe that they sent the correspondence while knowing that we would reject an offer like that. Who would be willing to surrender and give 100,000 people up as slaves?" The Empire knew about Tunka's belligerent personality. Haral's gaze turned cold before he looked down. "I believe the Empire wanted us to become angrier and charge at them." Haral looked toward Tunka, who nodded his head. Chief Haral then asked Cal a question. "I presume the Empire wants the Whipper Kingdom and not just Maple Castle." Cal took a sip of tea. He could see the reflection of his magically dyed white hair and blue eyes in the tea. He casually started to speak. "Of course." Click. Cal put his teacup down and Haral's expression worsened. The Whipper Kingdom's chiefs were from the Anon-Mage faction and mainly consisted of young scholars who were quite intelligent in areas other than magic. Haral explained the conclusion that they had determined. "The Roan Kingdom can't openly assist the Whipper Kingdom, I presume. If the Roan Kingdom openly assisted the Whipper Kingdom, then they would become enemies with the Empire. The Roan Kingdom was currently pretending to be close with the Magoru Empire while planning to take down their alchemist's bell tower. The Whipper Kingdom naturally knew about that as they were part of the alliance. However, they still asked the question. It was because they needed the Roan Kingdom's strength." Cal calmly answered back. "Correct. None of the Roan Kingdom's forces will be revealing themselves during this battle." "Does that include Mr. Choi Han and the necromancer Nim?" "Yes." Haral closed his eyes. However, Cal did not budge. "In order for the Roan Kingdom to become the Magoru Empire's new sponsor, we can't become enemies with the citizens of the Empire right now." The citizens who did not know about any of the sketchy things would hate the Roan Kingdom if they saw that the Roan Kingdom helped out the Whipper Kingdom in this war. All of the goodwill that Cal had built up through the Plaza Terror incident, and the incident at the Empire where he received the Medal of Honor, would all disappear from that single battle. That was why the Roan Kingdom was not planning on sending anybody in their true appearance to support the Whipper Kingdom without any justification. Haral opened his eyes back before seeing the cold expression on Cal's face and starting to speak. "And the jungle is not going to fight at Maple Castle, but instead will be moving independently." "Correct. The jungle is planning to hit the Empire separately. Both the Roan Kingdom and the jungle which bordered the Whipper Kingdom could not help out at the Battle of Maple Castle. Of course, the 4 kingdoms and 1 tribe were planning on helping out with materials and food. However, we don't have enough strong individuals. Our forces for battle are low in number." Haral reaffirmed all of this information before looking toward Cal, who still came to see them in such a situation. Cal had not come as a commander right now. He had come on his own as an individual. He had come to help them. That was why the chiefs could not figure this part out yet. "I suppose we won't be able to see Commander Cal Nim's shield nor the pillar of water and stone spears that we saw during the battle at the Gorge of Death." Some of Cal's ancient powers had become famous after the war against the Indomitable Alliance. They were naturally the indestructible shield that he used throughout the war. as well as the dominating water that was used in the battle against the dragon half-blood. The story about the unbelievable stone spears was spreading around as well. That was why they had welcomed the fact that Cal was coming to help. However, Chief Harral still needed to ask, but he had said won't be able to see rather than can we see to ask. Correct, you won't be able to see it. I need to hide my identity as well. I see. If the Roan Kingdom needed to hide, it was only natural that Cal needed to hide as well. He was the most recognizable hero of the Roan Kingdom right now. Harral held back a sigh. Tunka started to speak at that moment. The fact that you came here is enough. Cal and Choi Han, you too. Choi Han, who was standing behind Cal, flinched and looked toward Tunka. The same Tunka that Choi Han had beaten to a pulp one rainy day was looking at Choi Han with gratitude. Chief Harral, the natives and soldiers are enough. We will get an overwhelming amount of potions and material as support as well. Tunka spoke to Harral in his usual loud voice. Harral looked at the commander who had matured a bit and now knew how to console someone with an odd gaze. Originally, Harral had chosen to serve Tunka because he believed that Tunka could help him get his revenge by destroying the magic tower. However, maybe because they had now fought together before or because they shared the same goal of saving the Whipper Kingdom, but Harral now wanted to let Tunka shine as a commander. I understand. Commander Nim, I believe we will be victorious like last, by the way. Harral stopped speaking. Cal had started to speak to the two of them. He asked them with an odd expression on his face. What was he trying to say? Why didn't you ask about the pillars of fire in the Gorge of Death? Those pillars of fire had played the biggest role in preventing the Indomitable Alliance from destroying the Gorge of Death and crossing over. Cal looked toward Harral, who had not asked about it. Harral answered back with a peculiar expression. It is because we could not be certain whether those pillars of fire were the work of the Breck Kingdom or the Roan Kingdom. The pillars of fire. There were many different thoughts regarding those pillars of fire among the other kingdoms. All of them were certain that it was not one of Cal's powers. However, with both the Breck Kingdom and the Roan Kingdom remaining quiet about it, they could not be certain about who had created them. The rumor on the street was that it was more likely to be from the Breck Kingdom. This was because the last attack that had come before the Flame Dwarves launched the magic bombs was Rosalind's magic. Furthermore, the strength of the mages from the Breck Kingdom that was revealed made them suspect the pillars of fire were their creation. It is presumed that those pillars were created by Miss Rosalind and the Breck Kingdom's mages. It was hard to describe the expression on Harral's face right now. The Whipper Kingdom had killed the mages and destroyed the magic tower. That is why, even if the Breck Kingdom is our ally, it is difficult to even bring up the pillars of fire. Difficult. It was hard to ask the Breck Kingdom's mages for help. In addition, they could not openly ask a foreign kingdom for mages to support them when many of the Whipper Kingdom's citizens still hated mages. Using magic scrolls or magic spells were taboo enough already. This was the greatest difficulty for the Whipper Kingdom right now. The issues that happen when you completely isolate something were making it difficult for the Whipper Kingdom right now. Although they didn't have the luxury to be picky right now, the current Whipper Kingdom was being supported by the non-mage faction and could not move to oppose that. That had been the results of a different war. However, Harral cautiously asked Cal a question. Do you think that we would be able to ask the Breck Kingdom to send some mages to help us? 100,000 people for 80 years. That number was pressuring Harral. The bastard who had almost been crazy with his hatred of mages was looking for magic because he was afraid. It was at that moment. What are the coordinates of this place? Excuse me? Cal asked a completely unrelated question. Coordinates? Ah. Harral didn't know what was happening, but still gave Cal the coordinates. Rayon responded in Cal's mind at that moment. I memorized it. I will tell them these coordinates. They will be here soon, just who was coming soon. Cal got up after hearing those responses. He looked toward Tunka and Harral and started to speak. Commander Tunka and Chief Harral, the Breck Kingdom's mages will not get involved either. Harral did not look too good after hearing this. Cal continued to speak at that moment. Do you remember the mages who were not involved in the Whipper Kingdom's mage faction? Harol really could not figure out where this conversation was headed. I don't remember. However, Tunka honestly responded to Cal's question. Tunka had stopped caring about the mages around the Whipper Kingdom once the magic tower was destroyed. On the other hand, Harol had not stopped caring about them. Harol started to speak as he looked toward Cal with an odd expression. There were many mages who were not part of the mage faction and had been living in hiding. We were unable to capture most of them because they had escaped from the Whipper Kingdom once the magic tower was destroyed. Cal shared one of the things he had discussed with Crown Prince Alberu with Harol. Many of them ended up coming to the Roan Kingdom. Although the truth was that Crown Prince Alberu had called them over to the Roan Kingdom, Cal was making it sound like they had happened to come to the Roan Kingdom during their escape. And the Roan Kingdom has accepted them as citizens of our kingdom. Harol kept his mouth shut. He had already expected that the mages who had run away would have gone to different kingdoms around the continent. But it wasn't like they could blame the Roan Kingdom for it. The Roan Kingdom had already helped them out quite a bit. Furthermore, it was Cal who was telling them this information. Young Master Calnim, let's shove this conversation under the rug for now. That was why Harol decided not to deal with this issue at this moment. He did not want to fight with the Roan Kingdom while they were fighting with the Empire already. However, Cal did not want to do that. Unfortunately, I cannot do that. Excuse me? It was at that moment. Ooh-woo-woong, the room started to shake. Harol, who was half a mage, stiffened up and looked toward a direction. He heard Cal's voice as he did that. I invited someone who wanted to help the Whipper Kingdom out. Pat, a bright light flashed and a person appeared. Clunk. Harol's chair made a noise. Harol stood up without being able to say anything. The person who had just teleported into the room smiled gently toward him. It's been a while. Rosalind, she had come here alone. Cal stood next to her and spoke to Harol and Tunka, who were standing there with blank expressions. Miss Rosalind, who was kicked out of the Breck Kingdom's royal family and has become a free person, wishes to be hired as a mercenary by the Whipper Kingdom. The story about how Rosalind had been kicked out of the royal family was quite famous. Harol let out a gasp. Rosalind shrugged her shoulders and explained why she wanted to participate. All of my friends said they were going to the Whipper Kingdom. As their leader, I chose to come as well. Friends? Leader? Cal answered back as Harol subconsciously asked. The mages who are now citizens of the Roan Kingdom wish to participate in the Whipper Kingdom's war. The mages who are now citizens of the Roan Kingdom. Harol and Tunka immediately understood who they were. The mages who had been in hiding but were not a part of the mage faction and had ended up escaping from the Whipper Kingdom to avoid the non-mage faction. The mages who were now a part of the Roan Kingdom's mage brigade. Cal shrugged his shoulders and added on. His Highness, our Crown Prince, happily gave them some leave. The Roan Kingdom would not participate in this war. However, there were many ways to help them from the shadows. All of the mages decided that they were going to spend that leave time by going back home. Of course, not all of the mages who were originally from the Whipper Kingdom wanted to come here. However, most likely because they were all not from the mage faction and did not like how the mage faction did things. But the majority of them understood the feelings of the non-mage faction and the citizens of the Whipper Kingdom. They wanted to help out their place of origin. The Roan Kingdom is also planning on giving those mages some magic stones so that they can have some fun during their leave. The Roan Kingdom was going to provide the mages with magic stones to support the war at Maple Castle. Furthermore, Rosalind, the leader of the mages, was willing to help them out as well. Rosalind was the strongest yet most free person in terms of identity and status to help them out. Chief Harol started to frown. His pupils were shaking. Although they were no longer a part of the Whipper Kingdom, these mages that were originally from the Whipper Kingdom were coming to save them. They were coming to save the Whipper Kingdom that had nobody to reach out toward for help. They were willing to brave the danger and come, even when the Whipper Kingdom's citizens probably had nothing good to say about them. Harol was having conflicting thoughts in his mind. No, it felt as if it was more of an issue for his heart than his mind. Cal then slowly started to smile like a villain and asked a question. Oh, and those pillars of fire. You thought that they were from the Breck Kingdom, right? Perhaps. Did the Roan Kingdom make them? Harol's eyes opened wide as the thought crossed his mind. Cal pointed to himself with his finger. That's mine. It's not the Roan Kingdom's but yours, young Master Cal Nim. Yes, and for reference it is alchemy, not magic. Chief Harol was at a loss for words. All he could see was the white-haired Cal who was smiling. It was at that moment. Harol turned his head to the side. Keek, he could hear a suppressed laughter. It was Tunka. Tunka's shoulders were moving up and down as he tried his best to suppress his laughter. However, he jerked his head back and let out loud laughter in the end. Ka-ha-ha-ha-ha-ha-ha-ha-ha-ha-ha. Tunka could not hold back his laughter anymore. He looked toward Cal and started to speak. I am not afraid. I am not afraid of this war at all. Cal's smile became thicker. This seemed like the real Tunka. He looked like the crazed warrior who only cared about fighting. This madness was the reason that his enemies feared him. Tunka then confirmed something with Cal with sparkling eyes. I will chew the Empire up. Cal casually responded back to Tunka. Don't overdo it. Ha-ha-ha-ha-ha-ha. Tunka laughed even louder than before after seeing Cal's expression that seemed to be asking what was so funny. Human? Tunka is laughing as if he is back to his original self. I know, right? Cal gently smiled toward Harol, who, unlike Tunka, had a complicated expression on his face.